Welcome to r/am I the Jerk, where Karen has been stealing OP's hair. My hairstylist has been taking and keeping my hair, and I'm really freaked out. I'm in my 30s and my stylist is in her 40s. I got my haircut today at a stylist I've been using for about 9 months. This was my 6th appointment with her. Usually I go for a trim or a cut and style. However, today was different. I decided to go from having long hair that reached my lower back to an A-line bob. Up until now, I had only gone in for maintenance or trims, but this time the length adjustment was dramatic. She seemed excited about it and took a picture of the cut hair on the floor, intending to post it on her social media along with the before and after. This seemed totally normal and fine to me. She then grabbed a broom, swept up the hair, and placed the dustpan on the counter for a moment before heading to the back of the shop with my hair. Again, all of this seemed normal. After a few minutes, she stepped outside for a smoke. Here's where things got strange. The bathroom is located at the back of the shop. I had to go, so I stepped into the back. On my way in, I didn't really notice anything unusual. After finishing up in the bathroom, I started heading out, but then I spotted something on a table. There was a small, clear tote with my name on it. It didn't have a lid, and I could see that it contained my hair. At first, I didn't think much of it, but as I looked closer, I realized it wasn't just today's hair. The containers seemed to have my hair from at least a few of my past trim sessions, mixed with what looked like potpourri and some sand or similar material. What made it even stranger was that there were printed pictures of the cut hair with dates written on them. A printer sat next to the container, and today's discarded hair picture was still in the tray. I looked around but didn't see any other containers like this. It was so bizarre that I took a picture with my phone. Feeling unsure of what to do, I returned to the salon. When the stylist came back in, I casually mentioned that I had gone to the restroom. She seemed a little flustered but didn't say anything about it. I didn't know how to address what I had just seen, so I let her finish styling my hair, I paid, and I left. As a socially anxious introvert, this was a nightmare scenario for me. When I got home, I couldn't stop thinking about the picture. The more I stared at it, the more unsettled I felt. I decided to text her an hour later, attaching the photo of the container and asking for an explanation. Here's what I said. Hey, so I saw this and didn't know what to make of it. Can you help me understand this and why you have it? I'm not comfortable with you having this and request that you please discard the contents. Also, even though I loved my cut, I believe it's best if I find a different stylist. She hasn't responded yet. What the heck? Update. It's been about a week since the haircut, and with the holiday chaos, I've been all over the place. I ended up going to law enforcement last Monday to file a report. I'll probably have to go back if this person keeps contacting me like they have been. Here's a timeline of events. Sunday, I woke up to a bunch of texts from her early in the morning. My phone was on Do Not Disturb, but I have a setting that lets repeated calls or texts go through in case of emergencies. Here are the texts that she sent. I copy and pasted for you. 3:49 a.m. I don't recommend going to a different stylist because of this. It's not a big deal. Small towns and people talk, and you may not find anyone who will take you after this, so I'd reconsider. I don't like threats. 3:51 a.m. So, I have your biological material, and it's my property now. I can do what I want with it. I kept it because I can, and it means a lot to me. 3:54 a.m. Why did you send this picture? I know what it looks like. It's mine. You need to respond to me because I think this is a misunderstanding. It's no big deal, and you're saying you're switching stylists has me triggered. I do good work, and you said so. I also charge a $350 client separation fee. So yeah, you can't just say you're switching stylists without consequences. I know you said you already tried a few people before me. There aren't many beauty people in the area. And asking for an explanation for a stylist having hair in a salon is crazy. Where else would you find hair? I didn't do anything wrong, but I'll get rid of it if you're going to cry about it. But only if you say you won't be switching to anyone else for your hair care. You mean a lot as a client, and you always tip well. I do good work, so this doesn't make sense. Maybe don't threaten someone who does your hair or hurt their feelings by making accusatory statements. I didn't respond to any of these because the whole thing was just insane. I needed time to process everything. That afternoon, she started calling me repeatedly. She called me 14 times in total. Every other call, she left a voicemail. Most of them just said things like, call me back, or text me back, but 2 of them were completely unhinged. In one voicemail, she sounded like she was crying and said, call me back. I'm scared you won't come back to me for your hair. For real. I just like how your hair feels. That's why I kept it. Call me. The second disturbing message came late that night at 11:38 p.m. She said, "I got rid of it, except for one lock. I found out I like watching your hair burn more than I like keeping it." At this point, I was genuinely freaked out. I decided to take Monday off work and go to the police. Even if they couldn't do anything, I wanted a report on file. I did not respond to any of those that morning because it was so insane to me. I needed to process things fully before making a decision on how to deal with it, so I just stayed silent. By Sunday afternoon, I started getting phone calls. I woke up Monday to an email from the stylist with an invoice for $375 for a client breach of contract fee listed as the chargeable line item. The email body just said, "For being a jerk." It was sent from their business email, so they were really doing everything they could to ruin themselves. Even if I had a contract with this person, which I did not, the original amount was $350. They couldn't even get their extortion fees right. I emailed them back, stating that we had no contract and to cease all further communication with me from this point forward. I got ready and started heading to the police station around 9:45 Monday morning. I live in a rural area, so there are portions of my drive to and from our main town that do not have cell reception. When I finally got to town, I had 4 voicemails. I knew immediately who they were from. I spoke to one of the officers on staff. They took my statement, a copy of the email, and asked me to forward all of the texts and screenshots of the number of calls. They said, at the very least, the calls and texts could be considered menacing and harassment. However, the voicemail where they mentioned how they liked burning my hair was potentially concerning. The officer advised me to contact a legal representative in case this person tried to take the bogus invoice to a civil court. They also said I was welcome to change my number, but having the piling evidence if they continued to contact me after I explicitly told them not to in the email would only strengthen my case. I reached out to a lawyer on Tuesday and left a detailed message regarding the situation. They're apparently out of the office until next Wednesday for the holidays, so we'll see if they have any advice. Since then, I've received many more texts and calls from the stylist. They even sent a Happy Thanksgiving text on Thursday morning. Regardless, they're giving me a lot of evidence material to work with, but I feel so unsettled. I cannot wait to hear back from the lawyer this week. We've started recording my neighbor's antics, and she's not happy. Almost a year ago, my daughter and I were gifted with a new neighbor just before Christmas. I'm 47 and my daughter is 18. There are 2 duplexes at our address, and we live in the first unit. When our curtains are open, we can see our neighbors coming and going. It's been pretty peaceful here, and we've all gotten along just fine in almost 4 years that we've lived here. The new neighbor, who I'll call Vicky, moved into the other half of our duplex just before Christmas. I remember this specifically because we had made Christmas puppy chow, a popular sweet treat in the Midwest, and brought her some as a welcome gift. We also met her little terrier, who seemed skittish, but we didn't think too much of it. Vicky is not a great communicator. She mumbles, making her hard to understand, but we hope to start things on a friendly note. We adore animals. We have 2 dogs and a cat. We feed another neighbor's cat who is always left outside, and we enjoy feeding the birds. Our previous neighbors had 2 dogs that our dogs loved interacting with through the fence. They would give each other kisses and nuzzles. We had hoped that Vicky's dog would become their new best friend. Unfortunately, this was not the case. The first time our dogs met through the fence, Vicky's dog reacted by viciously snarling. We thought this might improve with time, figuring he was probably intimidated and scared in his new home. Our dogs are a little bigger than her terrier, but are not huge by any means. Our bigger dog only comes up to knee height. The backyard issues were one thing, but then we started noticing her dog running loose in the front courtyard. Seeing this once in a while is one thing, but it has become a daily occurrence. She has no control over him, and it's almost comical to watch her try to catch him. At first, we tried to be understanding, but as it happened more frequently, I asked her to please keep him on a leash. I explained I was afraid of accidentally running him over because he often bolts into the parking area and the street. She mumbled incoherently, but I could make out her claiming that he chews through his leashes. Unfortunately, nothing changed after this exchange. The situation has since escalated. Her dog has approached my daughter and me aggressively when we did not have our dogs with us. My daughter even saw him charge at another neighbor's elderly mother, who was so startled she picked up a stick to defend herself. When we walk our dogs and he happens to be outside, he runs at them in an aggressive manner. We decided to buy a chain leash and put it in a gift bag with treats and a note, kindly asking her to please be careful for his safety and ours. Despite this gesture, the aggression through the fence continued. It became nearly impossible to let our dogs out, as she often leaves her back door open, allowing him to run in and out as he pleases. We never leave our dogs out for extended periods, only long enough for them to relieve themselves between walks. I want to note that I have never seen my dogs start these interactions. They run out to do their business, and the little terrier runs up to the fence to initiate the conflict. Things reached a boiling point 2 weeks ago. Our dogs were having another skirmish through the fence. I was trying to pull my dogs back inside while they barked and jumped in reaction to Vicky's dog. A guest of hers, standing by and not intervening, loudly said to someone inside the house, "You should call animal control." Although she was not speaking to me, I responded, "Oh, you want me to call animal control? I will call animal control." I was furious. My daughter became extremely upset, worrying that animal control might take or blame our dogs. After calming her down and reassuring her that we were not in the wrong, we decided to start recording every incident. We now have dozens of recordings of her dog running off leash, and many of them, Vicky is nowhere to be seen. In almost every video, our dogs are calmly watching, occasionally barking back when he jumps and barks at our window. We even have a recording of him charging at us while we were trying to take our dogs for a walk. This is the only time she's apologized for her dog's behavior. Today, her dog was off leash again, and my daughter was recording. Vicky noticed this and became extremely upset. She mumbled something through the window, but it was incomprehensible. Then she knocked on our door to confront my daughter about recording her. My daughter confirmed that she was recording and calmly explained why. Vicky mumbled excuses about how hard her life is because she's caring for her disabled sister and elderly mother. She asked my daughter not to call animal control, even though my daughter never said she was going to. My daughter reminded her that all we had asked was for her to keep her dog on a leash or in a kennel for everyone's safety. We never wanted to call animal control. We started recording her dog to defend our dogs. We did not even consider doing this until the threat was made to call animal control on our pets. While Vicky did not make the threat herself, she did not apologize for it or clarify her stance. She's had plenty of opportunities to address the situation without even needing to come to our door. Today, things escalated further. Our dog was running loose again and I was recording. She got very angry, gesturing and muttering through the window. I finally decided to address her directly. I opened the door and she turned around to come onto my porch. She said, "You will see what happens if I get my dog taken away." I was livid. I responded, "Oh, really? I've never been in a physical fight in my life, but I was ready to stand my ground." Oddly, her tone shifted quickly and she reverted to making excuses about her difficult life and how her dog is all she has. I told her that was not my problem and reminded her that all we have ever asked is for her to keep her dog on a leash. At this point, my daughter and Vicky's daughter, who was visiting, joined the discussion. Vicky's daughter, who we will call Ashley, decided to jump in despite not having been involved in any of the previous interactions. She began accusing our dogs of barking and jumping at the fence, to which my daughter calmly replied that barking and jumping in their own yard is not illegal. Ashley claimed that our bigger dog was going to jump over the fence, which is absurd because even at his highest leaps, he barely touches the top of the fence. In the 4 years we've lived here, he's never jumped over. Ashley then claimed it was not illegal for Vicky's dog to be off leash. My daughter scoffed and said, yes it is." Ashley's response was, "Forget the law." She also taunted us for being scared of Vicky's dog and even insinuated that we must not be dog lovers. It was ridiculous. Clearly, Ashley has no idea what she's talking about. You're not being a Karen at all. I've been in a very similar situation, and all I can say is good that you're recording and absolutely 100% call animal control. Don't feel bad about it, and if your city has a leash bylaw, you can also call the police non-emergency line and she'll be issued a ticket. You have to look out for yourself and your dogs, and unfortunately, even though you clearly are the responsible dog owner, she could spin it that yours were the instigators since her dog is smaller, so it's best to get in front of it. Am I the jerk for not eating a Thanksgiving dish I suspect was made last year? My husband and I, both in our 30s, come from a large family. His side includes his parents, 2 siblings, and their spouses, and their kids. On my side, there are my divorced parents, each with a new spouse, as well as my siblings and their families. Altogether, we number well over 20 people, so hosting family gatherings can be overwhelming. Luckily, my divorced parents and their new spouses get along well, and there is no drama among them. Last night, we celebrated Thanksgiving, a holiday where it's tradition for everyone to bring a dish. Usually we communicate it ahead of time so that everyone brings something different. My sister-in-law, who's married to my brother, said she would bring my mother's famous sweet potato casserole. I thought it was a nice gesture since her mom passed away earlier this year, and she was honoring her memory by making her recipe. However, when I saw the dish, I couldn't shake the feeling that it was last year's leftovers. Instead of bringing a big pan, she brought several small and medium containers. Although it didn't have an unusual smell, the casserole was dry and just didn't look right. I chose not to try it and told my husband discreetly about my concerns. He also decided not to try it. After Thanksgiving, my mother called me to tell me that my sister-in-law was upset because she noticed I didn't try her dish. I explained my worries to my mom, who brushed them off, saying I was just too picky with food and that it was impossible for a frozen casserole to last a year without getting moldy. I pointed out that the several containers could have meant she had cut out the good parts and left the moldy ones behind. After an awkward silence, we agreed to disagree and hung up. I feel bad for my sister-in-law, but I couldn't bring myself to eat something I wasn't 100% sure was safe. So, am I the jerk here? I wouldn't have eaten it either. No way. It's strange that it didn't come in one dish. OP. That's exactly what made me uneasy. It wasn't like she had to make it at the last minute, so why the multiple containers? I think it's more likely that she just isn't good at making the dish and had to use smaller containers for some reason. Maybe she doesn't own a big dish, or it was just being used for something else. Instead of creating an elaborate story in your head, why not just ask her about the detail that concerned you? Not in an accusing way, but more of a casual conversation. Also, while leftovers wouldn't taste great after a year in the freezer due to freezer burn, they wouldn't be moldy. If your freezer was working properly, it's unlikely the food would make you sick. You don't have to eat everyone's food, but I think you overreacted here. OP. I didn't ask because I didn't want to put her on the spot if the answer was, I reheated last year's food. There's something wrong with your freezer if you think mold is inevitable in a freezer. OP. My mom made that comment, not me. I'm not sure why she said it. I don't cook daily, my husband does, and we usually eat leftovers for lunch the next day. I've never frozen cooked food myself. The funny part is, when it comes to parties, I always make flan. I think you're not the jerk for not trying the dish, but you are a jerk for concocting a story about the food being a year old, moldy casserole, and spreading it to family members. That's unfair and unnecessary. OP. I only mentioned it to my husband and was discreet about it. I told my mom after the party because she called me about it. I love my sister-in-law and didn't want to put her on the spot. I feel bad that she might be upset. Why would it be a big deal if the answer was, I reheated last year's food? It would have only been in the freezer for a year, and it could have been an opportunity for her to share a memory of her mother. OP. Personally, I wouldn't eat a casserole that had been frozen for a year. That was my suspicion, which is why I chose not to try it. I felt if I had asked her in the middle of the party and got that response, other family members might have skipped the dish too, and that could have hurt her feelings. Update, 12 hours later. After spending my morning reading and responding to comments, I decided to visit my mom's house for an in-person conversation. I showed her some of the comments on the original post, and she found the whole thing strange. We agreed that I should always be honest with her. She hasn't mentioned the yam debacle to anyone in the family. We decided to call my brother to discuss it with him and my sister-in-law. He told us to come over with an open mind. When we arrived, my sister-in-law started crying uncontrollably, and my brother led us to the kitchen, which was a mess. Long story short, it turns out that the casserole was indeed leftovers, but not a year old. Before her mother passed away, my sister-in-law and her mom had made several family recipes as a bonding activity. The casserole was one of their staples, and my sister-in-law had frozen several containers of it. On Thanksgiving week, she thawed some of it out and tried to recreate the original taste, but couldn't quite get it right. The pressure of making it for us got to her, and by Thursday, she decided to just reheat the frozen ones. As for why she noticed I didn't eat the dish, apparently, in previous years, I had complimented her casserole, saying it was the best I'd ever had. So this year, she was expecting some feedback and was disappointed when I didn't try it. I apologized and told her I was sorry for hurting her feelings. She also apologized for singling me out. We encouraged her to rest, and my mom, brother, and I cleaned the kitchen and tidied up the house. My mom even made her a comforting soup. My mom decided to stay, but I left a bit after everything was settled and everyone was calm. As a gesture of goodwill, I'm getting my sister-in-law a mini spa day, which I think will help her feel better. So that's the end of it. No big fight or dramatic scene. Sorry, not sorry. I'll be more thoughtful of people's feelings, but I still won't eat something I don't want to just to please someone. No one has reported getting sick, by the way. Lastly, does my mom really think frozen food can get moldy? She says she made that comment out of frustration and because she thought I wouldn't have a good response. When I looked in her freezer, all I found was meat and ice cream. So, who knows? My Karen girlfriend refuses to cook extra breakfast for me. I, 27 male, have been living with my girlfriend, who's 29 female, for several months now. For the most part, things are really good, and I plan to propose soon and hopefully have at least a couple of kids with her. However, we've run up against a conflict. She's an absolute morning person. I hate mornings. By the time I force myself out of bed in the morning and into the shower, she's already been up for at least 30 minutes, even though she has to be at work later than I do, and is at the stove making breakfast. She likes to make a huge breakfast in the morning. She usually has eggs, either French toast or pancakes, hash browns or breakfast potatoes, and sausage or bacon. Sometimes on weekends it's ham or steak. She eats almost nothing for lunch and usually has a small dinner, but she loves a huge breakfast. Meanwhile, I only ever have cold cereal for breakfast, or maybe if I'm feeling really ambitious, some instant oatmeal and orange juice. I only even start to come alive halfway through my second cup of coffee and definitely don't feel like cooking in the morning. However, my girlfriend obviously does. So recently, I asked her if she'd start making breakfast for me too. She asked if we were going to trade off and if I'd sometimes make breakfast for her too. I told her no, but reminded her that I do often make dinner for her. She said that since we trade off making dinner, we should trade off making breakfast too. I told her that there's no way I'll ever be able to muster that kind of energy first thing in the morning, but that since she obviously can, that she should just make me breakfast too. I said that it would take next to no extra effort on her part to throw in a couple more eggs, strips of bacon, an extra portion of hash browns, etc., since she's already doing it for herself anyway. But it started a fight, with her saying that it wasn't fair for me to expect her to think of me in the morning since I don't do the same for her. She seems to think that her making breakfast for me should figure into our division of labor and that I should do something extra in return. But I think that since she makes a huge breakfast for herself every morning anyway, that throwing an extra portion of whatever she's making on for me would take next to no effort on her part. So why should I have to do more for her in return than I already do? You're the jerk. Oh, so we'll take turns making breakfast for each other? No, you'll just make food for me. It's no extra effort for you anyways. The cheek on you. Dude should have offered to make dinner every night in exchange for breakfast every morning from her. The only way I could see this as not the jerk is if OP was down to make dinner as often, or in my personal opinion, more often, as the girlfriend makes breakfast. Come on, OP. Obviously, you're aware of the energy required to do things like make breakfast in the morning, so you should be at least willing to reciprocate later in the day. I'd be tucking her in, kissing her goodnight, and reading her a bedtime story if I could wake up to bacon and eggs some mornings. You're talking about proposing and having kids? Will she never get a morning off from the kids because you hate mornings? She's already up, so she should be the one to pack bags and lunches and cook everyone's breakfast? She's naturally feeding, so you never need to cover the night wake-ups. She's home earlier often, and that's the person who starts dinner and picks up the kids and deals with the homework, but you're totally doing 50-50. She's washing her clothes anyway, so it's no extra effort to put yours in, then fold them and put them away because she's doing that for the rest of the load, right? It sounds like she already feels like she's doing more, and now you're asking for something else. If it would require effort and energy for you to do it, it requires effort and energy for her to do it. This may be a small amount of additional energy for this one thing, but it makes me wonder if she's already feeling that she's putting out significantly more effort for household duties as it stands. Oh, and you're the jerk. Dude's girlfriend gets up early and makes herself a big breakfast every day. He asks her to make a little extra for him, and she flips out and refuses to do it. You're the jerk for staying with someone who treats you like this. There are actually women out there who would be happy to put a few extra eggs on in the morning so you can have something to eat too. But you definitely won't find them here on Reddit. Best part is, imagine if the roles were flipped. My husband gets up early and makes a huge breakfast just for himself every morning. I asked if he'd be willing to make a little extra for me, and he refuses to do it. All of you hypocrites would be telling her to divorce him and that she deserves better. Then you'd have the pathetic thirsty dudes commenting how they wish they could cook her breakfast since her boyfriend doesn't. They always pop up somewhere. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his girlfriend? Please let us know. It breaks my heart how transactional relationships have become. Want revenge by paying in pennies? Here, let me count these for you. Ages ago, I worked a frontline job at City Hall, registering cars and dogs and collecting money for parking tickets, property taxes, and the like. So, a basic entry-level municipal finance grunt, bottom of the food chain, nowhere close to being the one making the ordinances or rules, just a grunt. This was before the days of taking credit cards and debit cards for such payments, before smartphones, before the online banking world really began, ages ago. Paper, paper, paper. The city's ordinance on tax interest stated that interest would accrue daily against any past due tax bill at a rate of blah blah blah. Property taxes were due quarterly. Many people would come in to pay cash on the tax due date. Many, many more would remit their payments by checks through the mail. We kept extremely thorough paper records of all payments received through the mail, retaining their remittance stub, the envelope bearing the postmark, which was the date we would use to calculate any interest if it arrived past the due date. If the postmark was before or on the due date, no interest was charged. These were batched daily by each clerk, filed by date in our vault, so anyone who needed to could find any receipt or remittance fairly quickly. We needed to, often, as did the city auditor. Anyway, business as usual, and the few days following the tax due, we would always get a few stragglers through the mail, and the daily interest would have started adding up. Not by a lot. For most homeowners, this would only amount to just a few cents a day. We would send them a receipt in the mail with a note that they have a small balance now due to accrued interest, but we would hold it at the amount for 10 days. Most people would just send another check, some would ignore it, and others would come to pay it in person. Finally, the stars aligned and I got one. A real jerk of a gentleman who was extremely disgruntled that he got a bill in the mail for this horrible interest BS, which he slapped down on the counter inches away from me. He then slammed a repurposed melatonin bottle full of pennies down on top of the paper and said, "I hope whoever sent me this bill has to count these pennies," at top volume for all of the city hall to hear. I could tell already that it was mine. I saw my initials on the receipt when he slapped it down. Cue malicious compliance. I smiled as big as I could, said I would find out who had processed it, and took his receipt to the vault. I didn't even give him enough time to react. I just got up and went to the vault while cheerfully saying, "It'll just be a minute," before disappearing from his sight. I found the paperwork, including his 2 days late postmarked envelope. Then I sat down at my desk, took the melatonin bottle, looked him in the eye and said, "You're in luck today, sir. I'm the one who sent this balance due to you, so I will be able to count these pennies for you." And I did. I counted all 39 of those pennies, and I counted them one by one, very, very thoroughly. It took him about 20 minutes to pay his 39 cents from the minute that bottle hit the counter to the end of it. I was extremely pleasant and cordial and smiling at him the entire time. It was just fun at that point, so I kept pouring it on. Just so sweet. His face was practically purple by the end, and as he slunk out the door, without the smug satisfaction he was expecting when he slammed that bottle on my counter, I said, "Have a great rest of your day. Weather's beautiful." And it was. Grumpy Church Group seems confused about what my job is. A local church rented a few adjoining rooms for like a week or so for their pastor or other church officials. I'm not sure what their business is, but they seem like they're busy with meetings, etc. There are always people coming and going, and they like to congregate in our breakfast area by the lounge. They make coffee and bring snacks and refreshments or whatever, and meet for a few hours or so. This hasn't been an issue, and we haven't been particularly busy. But as the holiday approaches, we steadily get more and more busy. They're not rude per se, but they aren't exactly pleasant either. They asked me a number of times for plates, cutlery, etc. that I provided from our stores, and after the third time or so, I told them that our supplies are running low, so I can only provide so much. They gave me a look like they were thinking, "What kind of place is this?" and took what I offered. Sometimes they don't completely clean up after themselves either, which is annoying. A few times they asked me to ask other guests to leave their meeting area because they were disturbing them. I informed them that other guests are free to use our public spaces as they like. I didn't want to sound rude, but I suggested if they held their meetings in their rooms, no one would disturb them there. More, "What kind of rat hole place is this?" stares. We sold out fairly early yesterday, and I was running through the bucket checking info and helping guests' phone calls, etc. when one of the church members came to the desk looking grumpier than usual. He was glaring at me with a sour bulldog face as I was hanging up with a guest. I braced and internally prepared for whatever this was going to be. He asked me what I was doing. I said, "Helping guests at the moment, but what can I do for you?" Bulldog. "When you were doing whatever you were doing, people have been eating our cupcakes from our meeting area. They were meant for later." Me. "I'm sorry, sir. What meeting area?" He points to the breakfast area. Me. I apologize, sir, but that's our breakfast area, which is open to all of the guests. If food is left there unattended, we're not responsible for whatever happens to it. Bulldog. So, what should we do then? I'm thinking to myself, I don't know, keep it in one of your rooms until you're ready for your meeting maybe? Bulldog. I saw some dirty-looking kid grab one. Now we have to throw the rest out. And there are people drinking at the bar, being loud, causing a disturbance. He went on for a bit, I guess fully expecting me to clear out the area so they can have their meeting in their meeting area. I just repeated, it's a public space. We're not responsible for whatever they leave out. My job is to attend to guests, and I can't police their cupcakes or whatever. I didn't say it like that, but I made my point. He, at least, expected full compensation for the cupcakes, and I said I can't clear that because they chose to leave their stuff in a public area, and that isn't our responsibility at all. He got my name and my manager's cards and he left. He didn't do anything about the cupcakes, and he didn't say if they were going to meet there or not, so I just left it. Near the end of my shift, no one from the church had been by, and the cupcakes were still there, so I just threw them away. They're only here through Saturday, thank God, and I'm off tomorrow, so I don't have to see them. Praise. Am I the jerk for refusing to give up my seat and being crass about it? I, 36 female, flew home for Thanksgiving this week and got an early flight this morning so I would be able to do laundry tomorrow and relax before going back to work. I'm a plus-size woman. The cause was finally diagnosed after 3 years of weight gain. I've lost 4 pounds in the last 4 weeks. So when I booked my flights, I spent extra money and booked 2 adjacent seats, so whoever had the 3rd seat in my row would not have to be squished up in my business. Flying out was great. The other person in my row was cool, and we shared the middle seat and snacks and played Pokemon on our Switches and visited each other's Animal Crossing islands. Flying home was where things became a bit more problematic. I was settled into my pair of seats, and a gentleman tried to seat his daughter, who was around 12, in the middle seat, where I was taking up a good third of it. I said politely, "I'm sorry, that seat is booked. Your daughter can't sit there," while putting my hand on the other 2/3 of the seat. He immediately complained that he hadn't been able to book seats together and he needed to sit with his daughter. I shrugged and said I was sorry, but it wasn't my problem. This wasn't his seat. He called over a stewardess to complain. I explained my situation and showed my pair of tickets, and the flight attendant offered to comp my extra seat. I said no thank you, I needed the extra room, and waved to where I was partway into the middle seat. The stewardess came back 10 minutes later with a wife from a couple who agreed to switch seats so that the man could sit with his daughter. But not without attempting to shame me for not willing to help out a dad in need and commenting about how selfish I was. Edit. The woman who switched seats was rude, not the stewardess. The stewardess was nothing but polite. I said, I booked early, and I booked 2 seats together because, to put it plainly, I'm big. The woman turned red in the face and complained to me for being disgusting. I replied that his lack of planning was not my emergency, and she scowled at me for the entire rest of the flight. When I told my folks about it after I landed, my dad thought it was the funniest thing he'd ever heard, but my mom yelled at him and said that I should have been more willing to help out a dad with a kid when I had 2 seats. So I want to know, am I the jerk? Not the jerk. These airplane issues are getting out of hand. It's very simple. You book a seat, you are entitled to it. People can ask you to change, but if you say no, that's it. End of story. I don't understand why people find this basic rule to be so hard to comprehend. Not the jerk. First of all, congrats on the diagnosis and the weight loss. That must be such an unbelievable relief to have answers and finally see some progress after struggling for 3 years. Second of all, you planned ahead. And while it isn't always possible for everyone to do, such as last-minute changes at work, you put forth the effort so that you would not be an inconvenience to anyone else due to your current body type. And you spent a lot of extra money to do so. I'm sure several $100s overall. He asked, and even though you were offered reimbursement, you declined, as is your right. And it sounds as though he would have been just as happy to take your extra seat without asking and without the flight seeing you reimbursed if you hadn't had the courage to speak up for yourself. Congrats on standing up for yourself and taking care of your needs. Am I the jerk for crashing my roommate's car and then wanting to use her insurance instead of paying out of pocket? I rear-ended my roommate's car last week at a stop sign. It was a pretty minor accident. I was going about 10 miles an hour, and it was just a slight bump. Anyways, we got it checked out, and there's $2,000 worth of damages to fix her car, and $1,000 for the guy I hit. I wanted to use my full coverage insurance, but they wouldn't let me as I got into the crash with a car that was not mine. I proposed to my roommate that we use her full coverage insurance, as that's what insurance is for, and she pays about $400 a month for it, and I'll cover any and all premium costs of the insurance as well as the $500 copayment requirement. My roommate doesn't agree to this deal. She proposed two things. 1. We use her insurance, I pay the premium cost, the copayment requirement, and the value of how much her car went down in the market because using her insurance will show up in the Carfax when she sells it. I asked her how will she know how much the car value depreciated, and she said when she sells the car next year, she'll ask the dealer how much her car value decreased due to the accident. I can't agree to this arrangement for a couple reasons. Firstly, I don't trust the dealer. Wouldn't they just exaggerate the amount the car value went down to get the car for cheaper? And secondly, as I can't play any role in talking to the dealer or selling the car, I'm essentially signing a blank check to pay however much she or the dealer deems the car went down next year. This is too risky. What if she insists it's like $5,000 next year? I'll have already agreed to pay the decreased car value for using her insurance. I also talked to my parents, and they said that car values don't depreciate for getting into minor accidents like this one, just major ones, especially if the car was 100% fixed up. But there's nothing I can say to convince her that using her insurance won't lead to a substantial decrease in value of her car due to the accident being recorded in the Carfax. 2. The second option, if I don't agree to this deal, is to pay for everything out of pocket and not get her insurance involved. This would be like almost an entire month's salary for me. It's insanely expensive, and I don't want to pay out of pocket when my roommate pays $400 a month for car insurance. In my opinion, insurance is exactly for moments like this, and I'm really sorry that I can't use mine, but I'm willing to pay the premium on hers. Her argument is that I have the audacity to negotiate or argue with her when I crashed her car, and I should be apologetic and agree to handle things the way she wants to handle it. Anyways, am I the jerk for refusing to either of her two options and continually trying to negotiate for using her insurance without the car value decrease stipulations? You're the jerk. You used her car, you follow her rules. Amazing, people don't understand this. You crashed someone else's car and you have no say in how the owners want it to be handled. Sorry, but no. Don't loan your car out if you're not willing to deal with someone else's mess up. She's willing to pay for the damages and any increases in insurance. Unfortunately, OP's roommate just can't blindly ask for thousands of dollars for hypothetical damages on a small rear-end accident. At some point, you need to be realistic about the fact that lending people cars comes with a risk. Don't do it if you don't trust the person, and don't do it if you're unwilling to get totally done over. Quite frankly, OP would be totally in her right to say, oops, and let roommate take her to court and only get the $500 deductible, maybe. ETA. People need to understand what liability means. It means you're taking responsibility and ownership of whatever happens in that car. Just like with homeowners insurance, you're responsible if someone gets hurt on your property, even if it's kids playing in your yard that aren't yours. OP's roommate wants to suffer absolutely no consequences of OP's actions, and while I get it, that's not how liability works. She needs to very quickly understand just how serious the concept is. If roommate is so concerned about the depreciation on their car and insurance companies supposedly pay for depreciation, then the solution is abundantly clear. Use the insurance. OP pays the deductible and increased premiums, and roommate then asks for lost value. You're the jerk. You damaged her car. You don't get to decide what is easiest and most convenient for you. If she doesn't want to go through insurance, you need to pay up. Insurance rates go up after an accident. It's one thing to pay up the increase when it's your own fault, but she shouldn't have to deal with the increased insurance for doing you a favor and loaning her car to you. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her roommate? Please let us know. And this is why you don't let anyone borrow your car. Am I the jerk for telling my brother's girlfriend that Christmas isn't the meal to be cheap? I, 47 male, spend Christmas with my parents. My dad passed earlier this year, so my brother, who's 40, and his girlfriend, who's 32, I'll refer to her as Eve, have said that they will cook on Christmas. Eve is the cook. It's their first Christmas with their infant son, so they're very excited for it. When I was visiting my brother and Eve, They were talking excitedly about Christmas. This will be the first time Eve has cooked for Christmas and the first time she has ever cooked a turkey. Brother said they had already bought the turkey. I frowned as we had always had a fresh turkey from the local butchers, never a frozen turkey. Eve said that she had gotten a frozen turkey crown as it was cheaper and that they didn't need a large turkey with legs. She started talking through her plan, saying she had already bought turkey gravy mix as she didn't want to cook gravy from scratch, using tinned potatoes to make the roast potatoes, had already made stuffing balls and that they're in the freezer. I know that she's struggling for money at the moment as she is on maternity leave and is not returning to her job as nephew has additional needs. I was appalled when she said that she was going to cook Christmas dinner at their house the day before and then bring it to Mom's to heat it up. Mom is unable to do stairs, so we have to go to her. Eve tried explaining that due to the cost of living going up, she didn't want Mom to have the additional cost of cooking a Christmas dinner. They're having their own meal on the 24th, so Eve is cooking 2 dinners at once. I snapped at Eve. I told her that I know that she's being frugal with not going back to work, but that Christmas dinner wasn't the meal for her to be cheap on, especially Mom's first Christmas after her husband has passed. I told Eve that if she wasn't prepared to make a fresh meal that wasn't full of frozen food that God knows how old it is, then she shouldn't have offered to cook on Christmas. Eve then left the room with nephew, saying she needed to go feed him. My brother got annoyed with me, telling me that I was being rude. He said that he was the one paying for the Christmas meal. They had bought the turkey before Dad passed and had only gotten one big enough to feed them with leftovers. He had been the one that suggested including Mom and I for Christmas to Eve. Eve had been making things like stuffing balls and her homemade pigs in a blanket in advance, and using tinned potatoes was to make her life easier. He argued that Eve is the primary caretaker for nephew, so she takes shortcuts when she is home alone with nephew so that she can focus on him. Mom has called me and had a go at me for making Eve cry, especially when I know that she's stressed from looking after nephew. Apparently, she had taken nephew to go and cry upstairs, but I had no idea. I do feel bad that she got upset, but at the same time, I don't think Christmas is the one meal to be cheap on. Am I the jerk? Edit. I have always and will be supplying the dessert and making a dairy-free one for Eve. Me making the dessert was the agreement I had with my parents. They aren't actually struggling. They can and do live comfortably on my brother's wage. We work in the same field and are paid well. They chose to live well below their means. Okay, I'm the jerk. I will call my brother in the morning and apologize and see if I can come around to apologize to Eve in person, and I will offer to help her cook if she wants. I'm not going to turn up uninvited if Eve doesn't want to see me. I don't want to upset her more. She's a sweet girl and well suited with my brother. Edit. So this blew up way more than expected. By saying Eve is well suited to my brother, I just meant they balance each other very nicely. They're a lovely couple, and she has had such a positive influence on him. I have since spoken to my brother and Eve as he put the phone on speaker, and she was there. Turns out I didn't make her cry. Brother had told Mom I had upset her with my comments, but made no mention of Eve crying. Eve said that she didn't cry, she was just upset, but took nephew as she thought she would cry. She had been considering tinned potatoes and had mentioned them to me to see how they would go down with Mom and myself. Eve said she's going to make some roast potatoes and has asked if I would help her with the prep as brother is working during the day on Christmas Eve. I've told her that I will help her with the prep on Christmas Eve and that I would also take her and nephew out for lunch that day. I will also be buying another turkey crown that I will cook so that Eve has leftovers to make Christmas dinner pies, which had been her initial plan with the turkey before they offered to cook for the 4 of us. I apologized to her, which she accepted. I'm going to cook next year. You're the jerk. You're doing nothing to contribute, so you have no say in how they cook what is essentially a free meal for you. Get over yourself. You're the jerk. Do you know how much these meals cost? I just spent nearly $200 for my family of 4. If you want a fresh turkey, go buy it. Holy cow. Someone is cooking and preparing this meal for you, and this is how you act? Oh, and apparently this poor woman who is paying for your dinner that she is cooking is also preparing another meal for her parents, just had a baby, and is also taking care of her special needs nephew? You know, instead of complaining, maybe you could act like a grown man and help her out. Everyone sucks here. I can't imagine feeding people 1-month-old frozen food for Christmas. Not the jerk. Cooking for holidays is a huge to-do, and if you aren't properly prepared for it, it's not worth it. Frozen turkey isn't a big deal, neither is pre-made gravy, but canned and row-made potatoes is a bit much. Pitch in an additional $200 to $300 so things can be done right. Not the jerk, but honestly, I just have food aversions and old food disgusts me. This meal sounds vile. I can see I'm in the minority here. Look, I wouldn't eat food that was a month old, but I wouldn't have been so rude to Eve. I would have talked to my brother and said, "Hey, I'm concerned that the meal won't be edible for mom and may be unsafe." Then you should have offered to make dinner yourself and shoulder the cost. If you aren't prepared to do that, then you're the jerk. Sell me your house. A couple of years ago, my husband and I bought a house from the city council. We had seen it and we loved everything about it and the neighborhood. Inspection showed that apart from the central heating boiler, everything was in good order. We still needed to replace the central heater boiler. We also renovated the bathroom and upstairs, and we placed a new kitchen. Between then and now, we have invested money in our home. Amongst other things, we placed solar panels, renovated the front and back garden, and renovated our downstairs toilet. For reference, we have lived here for around 6 years now, and we have no intention on moving. Apart from the fact that we pumped a lot of money in the house, we love the neighborhood, our neighbors, and the fact that we are close to family and friends. The way the council sold houses went as follows. The house was up for sale for 6 weeks. If you were interested, you could schedule a visit with a real estate agent, place a bid if you wanted, and then after the 6 weeks, the city council would look at all the bids and see who offered the most. 2 weeks ago, I was home when a lady rang the doorbell. She introduced herself and told me that when the house came up for sale all those years ago, she and her husband were interested. They could see the potential, but their bid was rejected. She was enthused about how it looked now, from what she could see, and how beautiful the garden was, how wonderful the solar panels were and such. So I thanked her for her compliments and waited for the reason why she rang the doorbell. She told me that since they had more money saved now, she and her husband wanted to know if we were interested in selling them the house. I told her that we were not interested. She started whining and gave an offer, and I told her the same, not interested at all. More whining ensued, and she made a new offer. I kindly drew the line and said that she can offer all she wants. We love living here, and we want to enjoy our home with the family we've built in it. Then I told her that I had things to do, wished her a good day, and closed the door. I had barely turned around when she started ringing the doorbell continuously, so I opened the door and asked her what she needed to say. She told me this, almost verbatim. "You need to sell us this house. You have lived here for some years now. My husband and kids deserve a nice house like this. I gave you 2 offers that are very reasonable. It's our turn now, so sell us the house. We want to live here." I told this woman that her offers were laughable. She gave 2 offers, while we knew that we could ask for double the price and get that still. She lowballed. I reiterated that we were not interested and would not sell the house. I asked her to leave and close the door again. Then she started ringing the doorbell like a madwoman. After trying to ignore it, I ripped open the front door and shouted in her face for her to get lost. We are not interested. Even if we were, I would not sell my house to her since she's acting like a spoiled brat. I wouldn't want my neighbors to deal with her spoiled attitude. I told her that she doesn't need to think about trying to bully us into moving and to get away, or I would call the police. This time I slammed the door to get the message across. She stayed, screaming at the door that we have to sell the house to her, and walked around a bit before leaving. I did send a message in our Streets group app about her. People have said to keep an eye out for her. My husband was stunned when I told him this, as this is not a normal thing in our country to do. She has been seen once or twice, but has not caused any more problems for us or anyone else. Karen took my credit card while I was asleep. I, 27, male, have been with my girlfriend, 24, female, for 7 months. We don't live together, and she has sleepovers at my place regularly. 2 days ago, she spent the night at my place, and in the morning, while I was sleeping in, she got up, got dressed, took my credit card, and went grocery shopping with it. I woke up to a massive breakfast made by her as a surprise, and when I asked her how she got the money and time to prepare all that, she told me she took my credit card while I was asleep and headed to the supermarket to get the stuff she needed to make me a surprise breakfast. I was stunned. I asked why she didn't ask before taking my credit card, and she said I was sleeping and she didn't want to bother me. Besides that, she wanted this to be a surprise. I just stared and said, I don't know. You do realize you technically stole from me when you took my credit card and went shopping with it without my consent, right? She looked at me in complete shock and confusion and said that she was just trying to do something nice for me, and I just implied that she was a thief. I just shrugged and said it was technically true. She was so upset, she got up and stormed out of the kitchen, crying. She collected her stuff and left after she said she spent time and effort to prepare me breakfast, and I was out of line to say she stole from me just because she forgot her wallet at home. She kept hanging up when I tried calling her and later sent me money for the stuff she bought, although she didn't take anything with her. My sister came over, and when I told her, she called me an ungrateful jerk with no manners to react this way after this display of affection by my girlfriend. She suggested I get over myself and apologize as soon as possible, but I decided to take my time. Am I the jerk? You're the jerk. I would give anything to have a girlfriend who would do something like that for me. Not only did she sleep over, but the next day she gets up early and goes to buy groceries to make you breakfast. I will never understand why girls choose jerks like you instead of the nice guys like me. Oh yeah, it's because I'm not 6'4" and don't have a six-pack. I also don't have tattoos, and I treat them with respect. In return, I am despised by them. It honestly serves her right to be with an ungrateful jerk like you. Nice guys for the win. Karen complained to the restaurant manager to make me move tables, ends up getting arrested. So this just happened and I'm pretty upset about it. I went to California Fish Grill for a late lunch. It was a pretty standard ordeal. I ordered my meal, grabbed a drink, and made sure to grab a small table with only 2 seats so I wouldn't take up too much space. Not that it really mattered because the restaurant was fairly empty with plenty of tables. As I'm casually sitting at this small table for 2, an older lady came up to me and asked me to move. I was a bit puzzled because she came in after me. The table I was at appeared to be untaken and there were plenty of other available seats. I asked why, and she said she wanted a table big enough for her and her son. At this point, I told her I wasn't going to inconvenience myself when there were plenty of other open tables. She could simply go sit somewhere else with her son. So she started getting frustrated with me and telling me I needed to respect my elders and that her son would not be able to sit at another table. I just ignored her though, because it wasn't my problem. So this lady walks off and tells the manager that I took her table and was refusing to give it back to her. She brings the manager over and explained that her son is very upset that I took their table and it was hurting his feelings. We had a few minutes of back and forth before the manager gives me this look of, I don't make enough money to deal with this, please just move. So whatever, I get up, go to another table, and this lady just glares at me. I glare back, and she's sitting all by herself. At first, I thought she was just a liar and didn't even have a son. Maybe she just wanted to misuse what little power she had. After like 10 minutes though, this guy walks in with a full suit and tie, maybe 40 to 50 years old, and approaches this lady and calls her mom. They exchange some words, and he starts glaring at me too. At this point, I'm just annoyed and trying to eat my lunch in peace. So her son, a grown man, shouts at me from across the restaurant and asks if I think it's funny to disrespect his mom like that. And I just look at him puzzled because I have no idea what he's talking about. He shouts again, "Yeah, you in the hat." So I just ignore him because this is stupid. As he continued to harass me, I decided to give him a signal he did not appreciate. This lady and her son lost their crap, got up yelling and screaming and generally causing a scene. The son started threatening to beat me up. He asked if I liked being such a smarty, so of course, I had to let him know it was better than being a dummy. Anyway, this commotion resulted in the police being called by the manager. They showed up after an unclear amount of time, walked right up to this lady and her son and asked them to leave. The lady starts going off about how I stole her table, I was harassing her, and how I started it. Now, this poor police officer looks down at me, casually sitting at my table, eating my salmon, and tells this ancient woman that I don't seem to be bothering anyone. So the lady signals out the manager, hoping that they would corroborate her story, and the manager explains in great detail that this woman had come in and started harassing me. She asks the woman and her son to leave, and they both refuse because they paid for their food and said they had a right to sit at any table for as long as they wanted. After refusing to leave, this jerk and her son were cuffed and escorted away. I made sure to move to her table as soon as she left, just to rub the salt in the wound. Am I the jerk for leaving Thanksgiving dinner at my mother-in-law's house after I discovered that she threw out the dish that I brought? I, 27, female, am 5 months pregnant. I have pre-existing health issues that I manage by having a diet with no meat of any sort. This has caused me and mother-in-law to have conflicts, especially when I refuse to eat the food that she makes. I used to either come and not eat anything or just stay at home. Since I'm pregnant, I could not attend Thanksgiving and not bring food with me out of respect for mother-in-law. I cooked a small meal and brought it with me. Mother-in-law made a fuss about it, but justified it as I was making a mistake robbing her grandbaby of getting all the meat benefits. I explained that I take supplements as a replacement, but she shrugged and was upset. We waited till the dinner table was set. Mother-in-law didn't let me help or go into the kitchen at all. She took my dish and said she'd reheat it for me and put it on the table. Yet when I sat down, I was stunned to have discovered that she did not put my dish there. When asked publicly, she denied receiving any dish from me and started asking if I accidentally left it at home or the car. There was a huge blow-up. Mother-in-law tried to convince me to sit back down and just eat what she put on the table. I refused, but my husband insisted and told me to let it go this time. I decided to leave. I grabbed my stuff and walked out. I found out that she threw out the dish I brought and tried to get me to just eat whatever she put on her table. She said that she was looking out for my grandbaby's health, and my husband said it wasn't worth leaving the celebration and causing a scene. We had a big argument, and his mom thinks I'm being dramatic and hard to deal with. Was I the jerk for walking out? Info: the dish I brought was supposed to keep me full and provide me with all the benefits, so it wasn't like any of her appetizers or side dishes. I also put work into making it, and it cost me money. She keeps insisting it's about her grandbaby and her concern for their health. Not the jerk. I've been in your shoes. Tell your husband to defend you or you're out. Things will only get worse. She's gonna force you to raise that baby her way, and your husband is gonna let her do it. The gaslighting from her is especially scary. Literally, tell your husband straight out that he either be 100% on your side from now on for everything, or you're leaving him. Do not put up with that. It will ruin your life, your marriage, and your kid. Maternity wear. This happened several years ago. After onboarding a new job, I was told I could hire an assistant. The HR director, Kelly, handed me a stack of resumes, told me about a friend's daughter, and bumped Kat to the top of my interview list. Kat passed the tech test with high scores and interviewed well, so I hired her. Kat showed up to work on time, had a good attitude, performed well on assignments, and was generally a pleasant person all around. After probation, Kat was excited to tell me that her last raise was enough to get an apartment with her boyfriend. It was a couple months after her raise, I started to notice Kelly spending an inordinate amount of time talking to Kat. The conversation sounded personal and cordial, and Kelly was friends with Kat's mom, so I didn't think much about it. Until one day, Kelly barges in my office. "Did you know Kat moved into an apartment with her boyfriend?" Well, I might have heard something about that. "Well, Kat is pregnant and her mom is devastated," and proceeds to fill me in on the details of Kat's personal life. Uncomfortably, I interrupt, acting like I have a lot going on. This really isn't any of my business. If there's something related to Kat's performance that we need to discuss, please fill me in. But as for me, Kat is doing a great job. A few months pass. Kat's baby bump is starting to show. Kelly is again in my office. "Kat is not in compliance with the dress code." Last staff meeting, Kelly handed out a dress code policy with a collage of various women's shoes and dresses and suits, presumably cut from fashion magazines, to assist us determine what was acceptable and what was not. Is she wearing something in the not allowed clippings? As I began to spread the clip art around my desk. "She isn't wearing maternity clothes," as Kelly points to the bullet about maternity clothes in the policy. Well, the policy clearly says maternity wear is allowed. Kat is clearly pregnant, and she is wearing clothes. So, you know what I mean when I say maternity clothes? Clothes from a maternity store. I told Kelly that I would talk to Kat, which I did. Kat filled me in that there was some drama with her mom not liking her boyfriend, that Kelly is involved, etc. I just told her to read the policy and be sure she complies, and no matter what, to trust me. I had her back. The next day, Kelly is in my office, telling me that Kat is again not in compliance with the dress code. At this point, Kelly knows I'm getting frustrated. Okay, I'll talk to her again. This time I want you present because I'm going to give her a formal warning and assign remedial training. I bring Kat into my office with Kelly present and formally read off my prepared statement, making it clear that it will go into her permanent file. Kat, you were given a verbal warning yesterday to comply with this dress code. Because it is not clear to me what is or is not a violation of this policy, you are to report to the HR office 10 minutes early every morning for the next 2 weeks for dress code inspection. Report to me if HR finds your dress unfit. If you are found to be in violation of this policy and are unable to correct your dress before the start of the workday, your employment will be terminated. By the time I'm finished, Kat is tearing up and Kelly is staring at the floor, speechless. I dismiss Kat. I hope that this is the last I hear about this, because if I do, I'll fire her. As Kelly, speechless, walks out of my office. I told Kat not to worry about any of this. We have them where we want them. So for a week, Kat reported to me that her clothes were fine per HR inspection. At the beginning of the second week, she was chuckling. Kelly told me that I looked very nice today. Attitudes began to change and everyone was smiling. I got called to the red carpet by Jim, the CEO. He tried to keep a straight face as he recited what he heard was going on and asked me to cut the remedial training short because it was embarrassing the HR staff. Straight-faced, I said, "Well, Jim, if I stop the remedial training, I'd have to fire Kat. Company policy clearly states that failure to complete a formal remediation plan is immediate termination. It is very clear. There is zero tolerance. You can't fire a pregnant woman for what she wears. I'm asking, no, I'm telling you to stop. Stop following a company policy?" Laughing, he concedes. Okay, I am rescinding that ridiculous dress code policy effective immediately. Am I the jerk for not adding a third bathroom to our house? My husband, our daughters, 18, 16, 16, and 12, and I live in a 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom house. All of the girls share a bathroom, and they've been complaining about it for a while. We've been saying we'll convert the laundry room into a bathroom for the twins for a while. It's an expensive project, so we've never gotten around to it. My husband and I started working on our garage recently and turned it into a gym for him, a new laundry room, and an office for me. Then we came into some money and decided to renovate both bathrooms, remodel the kitchen, and do work on the backyard. The girls were upset when we told them about the work we were doing on the house. They were saying it's not fair that my husband gets a gym when the twins share a room, and that we chose to work on the backyard instead of adding the third bedroom. They've been calling us selfish and even got our parents and siblings to give us a hard time for not giving them another bathroom or giving the twins their own rooms. They don't understand that now that the laundry room is done, we have the space for the bathroom. The bathroom is next on our list. I wanted to get some outside opinions on this since our kids and our families have been giving us a hard time. You're the jerk. Does going without a home gym diminish the quality of life? No. Does forcing 4 humans to share one source of plumbing diminish quality of life? Yes. You're the jerk for springing for a luxury instead of choosing to make life easier for your kids. Editing, because I keep getting the same comment over and over from people saying something along the lines of, "How dare you? I live in a house of 6 or 9 or 12 people and we share a fraction of a bathroom. You are spoiled and icky." And I'm really tired of pinning the same response over and over, so I'll just say it here. 1. I grew up the youngest of 5. I shared a bathroom for 18 years with siblings. 2. I share an apartment with a few folks, and we share one bathroom. 3. My point is that if I had a bunch of money lying around, I'd spend it to make the lives of my kids a bit easier, rather than on something frivolous. 4. For all of you crying out, entitlement, luxury, ugh. Please take the time whilst you redden your faces in rage at the prospect of 2 people sharing a bathroom instead of 4, to also take your energy to defend OP's choice to redo the existing bathrooms, redo her kitchen, add a new gym, and redesign her backyard. 5. You all like to skate over the fact that OP lied to her kids about a new bathroom and has presumably been doing so for a while. There are 4 of us in our home, and we share one bathroom and all have the smallest bedrooms you can even imagine. If I came into some money, the first thing I would do is extend to give my kids more space in another bathroom. There's no way I'd be adding a gym a second laundry room, and whatever else until I made my kids more comfortable. You're the jerk. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or not? Please let us know. First world problems for the win. Don't want to total my late model car? Okay, I warned you. 2 years ago, I hit a warthog-sized raccoon on my way home from work. I was driving an '09 Suzuki SX4 hatchback. The raccoon did a pretty good bit of body damage to the front bumper and wheel well. The estimate to repair it was $2,200. I giggled at the adjuster when he said the insurance company was approving the repair instead of totaling the car. He insisted it was worth just under $5,000, so it should be fixed. I told him that having owned the car for a decade, it's not easy to get certain parts since Suzuki closed their US business. He insisted. Insurance provided a rental. It ran $800 a week. Had a rider for a better rental. So 4 weeks go by. The car isn't repaired. The shop can't find a wheel well to finish the job. Adjuster calls, a bit mad at me that I wasn't pressuring the body shop. I reminded him that I have insurance to make me whole, and that's not my job. The repairs were a bit more expensive than anticipated. $2,500 in repairs, plus lockdown cleaning fee of $200, equals $2,700 plus $3,200 for the rental. They had now spent more than the alleged value of the car. So, no. The adjuster insists the car is drivable without the wheel well while he finds the part. I offered that was a stupid idea and it's there to protect the engine compartment. He insists. Okay, I drive it. My work is 30 miles away. I drove it through a snowstorm with no wheel well. The snow was thrown into the engine compartment. Immediately in front of the affected wheel is the battery, fuses, and computer. They were all absolutely caked in snow, salt, and ice. Now, all the dash lights are going off randomly and the car is shutting itself off. I called the adjuster and told him that driving without the wheel well has likely ruined the computer, fuse box, and battery. I asked which shop has a contract with them to fix these issues. Big sigh on the other end. Pregnant pause. Well, I think we've spent enough on this car. We'll just total you out. It's probably only worth $2,000, so that's what I'll pay you. Nope, you said just under $5,000. That's what I want. They wrote me a check for $4,700. All in all, I figure they spent about $10,000 on a vehicle worth at best $5,000. I would have accepted $3,000 or less if they had offered it originally. Am I the jerk for not comping the bill? I, 20 female, have been working in the restaurant business since I was 14. I've seen numerous amounts of people come and go, both customers and coworkers. I became a server about 4 years ago at this local small business, and I thought I had seen how far people really take things. About 5 months ago, I had a party come into my restaurant with 2 adults and 3 kids. They sat down in my section, and I already had a bad feeling about them. At first, when I went to start them off with drinks, one of them was on the phone, but both of the adults completely ignored me. So I asked again, and the kids started screaming out drinks. So I asked if it was okay if I brought those out, and the mom said, "Sure, whatever." I asked her again what she would like, and no answer. I brought the kids their drinks and the adults waters just in case. When I dropped them off, they then asked if they came free with kids' meals. I told them yes, as long as they bought kids' meals. I then left them alone for a few minutes to look over the menu. So I went back about 5 minutes later and told them that the kitchen will be closing in about 20 minutes, just so they aren't blindsided. They ordered then, and I continued on serving others and cleaning up for closing. I brought out their food and they started eating. Mind you, they got a meal for each kid, so drinks were free since they all got fountain drinks, and the adults got 2 meals each plus 2 drinks each. Drinks they asked other servers for, thinking I wouldn't add it to their check. So I went to check on them halfway through, and they said they didn't like the food, so I asked if something was wrong with it. It was half-eaten. They told me, "No, we just don't like it, and I wanted to try it," for both of their second meals. I said, "Okay, so would you like me to throw it out?" They told me yes, so I did. The meal went on, and I dropped off their checks, and I knew they were going to have an issue with it since I hadn't taken off the meals. As they were calling me over, they asked why I hadn't taken it off, and I told them I didn't have the manager's code in order to do that, even though I did. They asked for the manager, and she also told them that we don't take food off if you just don't like it, and they weren't very happy with that answer. Then they complained that I pressured them to get more food, as if that's not my job. So they threatened to walk out, screaming, "I'm not paying for this crappy food." "Okay, fine, call the police on me." And, "You're making me look like the bad guy in front of my kids." So we called the police. They were forced to pay by the officer, and they were trespassed. She called her husband, and he started threatening me and my coworkers. This went on for days by him. Should I have just comped the check rather than starting a fight? Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. This is a scam they pull over and over again to get food without paying for it. Maybe they'll think twice about it next time, and they certainly won't be coming back to your restaurant anymore. You did your colleagues and your industry a favor. Am I the jerk for using a map to show my neighbor how big our state is? I, 34 female, live in southern Arizona. I have a new neighbor, an Irish woman who's in her 30s, who recently moved here with her American husband. They moved into the apartment next door about a month ago. Before that, they lived in New England, where the states are much smaller. Comparison for anyone who has never thought about it. The state of Massachusetts, from north to south, is the same distance from Tucson to Phoenix. I'm single, and my neighbor's husband is out of town for a couple of weeks for work, so she thought it would be fun to take a day trip to show her around the area. Great. She wanted to start at the Grand Canyon. Not great. Then she thought it would be nice to pop over to Las Vegas for lunch. Oh no. I tried to tell her that she had picked places that are much further apart than she thinks, but she insisted it couldn't be that bad. So I pulled up Google Maps and showed her just how far we were talking about. That if we drove from here to the Grand Canyon, it would be 7 hours if we never stopped for food or gas, then 4 hours from the Grand Canyon to Las Vegas, and that's not even counting the drive home. It's not an easy, fun day trip. After seeing the times, she now believes me about the distance, but she says it was rude to pull up a map to show her. She says that if she wasn't getting what I was saying, it's my fault for explaining it badly, and that using Google to show her is just a jerk move to treat her like she's stupid or like she's a kid. I suggested a few places closer to us, but she yelled that, "You better look up a map to make sure it's not too far first," and went back into her apartment. I really didn't mean to upset her, and I definitely don't think that she's stupid. I just didn't know how else to get her to believe me that the trip she wanted to take wasn't possible. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Showing her a map is a perfectly logical and respectful way to demonstrate the distances and time involved. I do it all the time when I want to find driving distances for myself. Her reaction seems childish. She disagreed with what you told her, so you showed her hard evidence. She should have given you more respect since you lived there longer than her and were likely to already know better. And once you backed up your point, she should have just conceded. Karen boss ruins our workplace, ends up losing her career. The Red Queen was number 2 in our office, a person who rose through treachery, backstabbing, personal connections, and incompetence. You know, the typical way a manager moves up. She spent 27 months as a line worker before deposing her supervisor in a coup. In this industry, it usually takes 5 years to get to a point where one really knows what they're doing. She then attached herself to an office boss known as Dan the Dirty, doing his hatchet work on employees, and so became indispensable to him. So when Dan the Dirty came to our office, he dragged the Red Queen with him. It was a 3-month honeymoon where the office was being inspected, so she kept her fangs hidden. The day after the inspection report came out, it was open season on the staff. The report did say that it was a very productive office. Well, several things came out within days. This was before we had electronic time cards, so she wrote up a 17-page rambling procedure on how to log your time. AL staying in town was one color, going away was another color. SL for yourself was one color, your male spouse was another, female spouse another, kids another, etc., etc. We had more colors than a Crayola 64 crayon box. Also, you had to log time by the minute, in spite of the fact that the system only took 15-minute increments. People were taking 21 minutes of leave and signing out at 5:19. It drove HR insane. In the procedure, if you came back from coffee after 15 minutes or lunch after 45, you were on leave. You could only take lunch between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. unless you had express written permission in advance from her. We're a 24-hour organization. People on the night were getting daily written authorization from her merely to eat. I was away on assignment in a time zone 6 hours different and had to get written authorization from her to eat for my entire team on a daily basis because we never ate between 10 and 2 for that time zone. You also had to sign in at exactly 8 and out at 5. Again, we're a 24-hour organization. The Red Queen also developed office and unit spies who would report you if your coffee break went 16 minutes. The office spies were also reviewing your email and your time cards to ferret out any malcontent or color violators. As you can imagine, this did wonders for trust and morale. This is one of about 100 insane things that she did. Here's the malicious compliance. One type of log entry on your time card was doing the time card. Huge swaths of employees began putting doing the time card on their time card. So your entire day could be doing the time card. Night shift employees began to only work between 8 and 5, and all-night productivity stopped. It wasn't long before productivity ground to a halt in the office, and panic began to take hold in the ivory tower. Unfortunately, the Red Queen countered by doctoring the records and cooking the books to make it look like we were still being productive so that headquarters wouldn't catch on, so she survived for 22 months before the office was on the verge of mutiny. I mean, why actually be productive when you can work 10 times harder to destroy productivity and make it only seem like you're being productive? But word did get out and an inspection was scheduled. In a move befitting Game of Thrones, the Red Queen threw Dan the Dirty under the bus and fled to a Connecticut office before inspection and then utterly destroyed that office. I wrote one of many letters to headquarters saying that Westeros had nothing on our organization and that a day in the office was like an episode of Game of Thrones, only with less blood and more paper. It all eventually caught up to her. The very head of the organization threw her out, but not before she destroyed one office and nearly destroyed 3 others. Last I heard, she was doing data entry in Colorado somewhere. Am I the jerk for kissing my husband at a friend's event? I, female 37, and my husband, male 42, attended my friend Becky's, female 36, annual barbecue last weekend. Becky and I have been close friends since college. I met my husband shortly after graduating, and while him and Becky have never been very close, such as hanging out without me, they have always been friendly towards one another, and we've all hung out together on numerous occasions. Becky recently lost her husband due to a medical issue. This year, Becky texted me the day before her event and told me that she was making this year's occasion a child-free one, and that meant I couldn't bring my 3-year-old and that she understood if I couldn't make it. I bit my tongue in an effort to be respectful and thanked her for letting me know and told her I indeed wouldn't be able to make it. She responded by saying she was looking forward to seeing my husband at dinner though. I saw no issue with this and sent her a thumbs up. The next morning was the day of Becky's event, and my mother-in-law luckily agreed to babysit our toddler. We thanked mother-in-law and headed over to Becky's with food, gifts, and no kids in tow. As we walked in, Becky greeted my husband with a hug and an excited, "Hello," and then turned to me with a sort of surprised look on her face. She didn't say much to me and went into her living room with everybody else. I went to put down the food on the counter while she introduced everybody to my husband and referred to him as "dear." My husband told me this later on in the evening. I walked into the room and she gave me no mind since she was deep in a conversation with a friend of hers. Sometime into the party, Becky and my husband were both standing at the patio door and she had her arm around his waist. He spotted and looked at me with a "help me" glare, so I made my way over thinking she had one too many. I gave him a kiss as he separated from her grasp. Becky looked at the both of us and then back at the others at the party with a shocked expression and then ran back into the house crying. She ran into the bedroom and locked the door and screamed at me to leave through the door. I tried asking her what had upset her and why she wanted us to leave numerous times. She refused to answer me and just kept crying. So we left and on the way out received some pretty dirty looks from the other partygoers. Later, I received texts from several mutual friends who scolded me for PDA and how Becky was so upset that I had made her party look tacky and that I was rubbing it in her face that she was a widow. I was so shocked and hurt to hear this and mentioned that every other couple at the event was also being relatively affectionate and that despite my husband and I not being ones to commit PDA in public, I had given him a side hug and a peck kiss and that was all. Anyways, I am at a loss at what I should do. I feel like I hurt a close friend, but I'm not sure how and what I can do to fix it. Reddit, help. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. I mean, it's so obvious she was hitting on your husband. She's probably embarrassed and humiliated. OP should text her a fake apology. I'm sorry you got upset, but you see, husband signaled me to come kiss him because he felt really trapped by you clinging to him. Then write off the friendship, cause it's already over. I called my stepdad pathetic and my entitled mom spineless on Thanksgiving. I'm 19, female, and using a throwaway because my siblings use Reddit. I know it sounds bad, but here's the gist. I've got 2 siblings, 15 female and 17 male. And while I lived in mom and stepdad's household, currently at university, I was tasked with most chores. Washing dishes, doing laundry, cleaning, running errands, you name it, while my siblings had none. Their reasoning? You're older. I protested this many times, telling them my siblings were old enough to also share the chores, but stepdad always shouted me down and called me ungrateful after he put a roof over my head and fed me. That's been a line he's thrown at me endlessly. My siblings have been given anything they want, allowance, gifts, electronics, but if I asked for something, I was told I didn't need it. That's why I started babysitting at 12, so I could buy my own goods. I've worked ever since. They stopped buying me basic goods, like sanitary products, as soon as I started working. I'm at university on a full scholarship because I knew early on I'd be on my own on this front. I worked my butt off to get into my top choice. I love it there. I feel free and in control of my life. The issue came during dinner. Mom, stepdad, grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins were there. I was talking to an aunt who'd congratulated me on getting into my university, and stepdad says loudly, OP thinks her fancy college makes her better than everyone else as usual. I can't explain what was different this time, but I snapped. I told him he was pathetic for picking on me all my life, when all I'd done was try to be a good kid. And I told my mom she was spineless for letting him treat me this way, and I left, which felt like the right thing to do at the time. I slept at a friend's and got a train back to university the next day. My mother has since called me distraught, like full-on sobbing, saying I was being overdramatic and that I humiliated them. She says that I'm ungrateful because, look at how well you're doing, that's because of us. And I just don't know. I feel bad she's this hurt. People have it worse. I'm doing well. I have a family to come home to. I just don't know. Am I being dramatic? Am I the jerk? Update. 1. I can't tell you how validating these comments have been. I never talk about my family in real life because deep down, I think I feel ashamed of how my family treats me. So this has been helpful, really. I don't have it in me to tell them what I need to tell them outright, but I do have it in me to go no contact. They don't fund any part of my life, so the only thing they can hold over me is themselves. I'm writing an email now to let them know not to contact me and that I won't be contacting them until I'm ready to communicate. 2. Brother texted, Mom won't stop crying. Hope you're happy. Sister texted, this sucks. So there's that. I love my younger siblings, but I'm going no contact with them as well before I figure out what I want. Thanks for the support. Not the jerk. OP, your mother is spineless. She has allowed for you to be treated as less than for being a stepchild. She allowed for you to go without for the sake of peace. You are not overdramatic and deserve better. Keep in contact with those who truly value you and move on. If you want to tell your mom your feelings before doing so, go ahead. But she will not be open to what she has done in order to protect herself from facing her neglect. That is not on you. Your siblings suck too for never speaking up for you. Go make your own family, not the jerk. Karen gets kicked out on Thanksgiving. I, 27 female, have a kind of unusual profession in that I run a wildlife sanctuary and rehab center of wolves, coyotes, and birds of prey, mostly animals that have been surrendered or taken away from private owners or just can't go back into the wild for some reason. I started working for the previous owner out of college, and when he passed, he willed the center, the house, and the surrounding land to me to take over since I was the most dedicated and successful at doing the work. Since I have a weird situation with my own family, he was also kind of dad number 2 to me, so I miss him a lot. My family situation is weird because my parents split up when I was little, had other kids with other partners, and then they remarried when I was 16. So I have 4 half-siblings, and they all resent me because my parents getting back together meant that theirs split up, and my parents have always been way more attentive to them to make up for it. So I got the worst of both situations, being the unwanted first marriage kid when they were divorced, and then the ignored kid because of the half-siblings later. I don't really stay close or visit much, partially because I need to be on site to take care of the animals, but I keep in touch. So for the drama. Now that some of the siblings are getting married and having kids, my parents' house is too small for big gatherings. My house is the only one big enough to fit everyone, so my mom asked if we could do Thanksgiving at my place. I was reluctant, but I figured maybe it would clear the air some, so I agreed. Plus, the kids would get a kick out of the menagerie. Things were going fine until my sister, 21 female, showed up and started making jokes about how I've taken crazy cat lady to the extreme and getting the other siblings to chime in. I tried to ignore it, but the jokes got meaner, and when my mom said she liked the house, my sister said, "Maybe I should get an older sugar daddy. It worked out well for OP." I snapped and told her to get out. She didn't believe me, so I got up, took her plate, grabbed her bag from the living room, and told her to leave. It probably helped that my big rescue wolf dog heard my tone and came over to sit next to me, but she finally got up and started angrily getting her things. My parents protested, so I told them they could go too. After an argument, a threat to call the cops if they weren't gone within an hour, and my dog hackling up and growling when my brother put his hand on my shoulder, they finally left. Now they're mad because I ruined Thanksgiving for everyone. The kids were scared. I sicked my pet wolf on them like a psycho and overreacted to a joke. I feel bad for the kids. Maybe I should have just taken it on the chin and not invited them back instead of kicking them out. Not the jerk. Your house was full of unruly beasts howling like absolute monsters, and also your rescue animals. Good riddance to your crappy siblings. Do yourself a favor and drop them from your pack. They aren't good people for you. Family should be those who build you up, not tear you down. Not the jerk. If you viewed the man who willed his house and sanctuary to you as a father and someone who truly cared about you, then having him called a sugar daddy with all the implications with that, then you have a right to kick them out. That's rude and just downright awful to say to you after being nice enough to host and have everyone, especially knowing the relationship between you and your siblings. Not the jerk. Your sister was bullying you right at the table and getting others to chime in. What were you supposed to do? Just sit there and take it in your own house? I also would have kicked them out. Tell your parents all of this, and if they don't listen, it's on them. You can wipe your hands clean of the situation. Am I the jerk for not allowing my cousin's stepkid in the family photo? My, male 30s, family grew up taking a big Thanksgiving picture that is used for Christmas cards. I kept the tradition going with my family. We host Thanksgiving every year, and it's always around 20 plus people. Most families we hang out with are from my wife's side, since mine are pretty scattered around. The past pictures were fine, but some tended to wear pajama-type outfits, mostly PJ pants and a t-shirt, to Thanksgiving. No big deal to me, but past picture was mixed with mostly nicely dressed people and then a random few in pajamas. This year, I texted each family and asked them to have a nice but casual outfit for the picture, but feel free to dress however they want the rest of the day. I even said jeans and a nice shirt is okay for the picture. So day of Thanksgiving. My wife's cousin Sarah's family arrived that included 3 stepkids, 2 dressed in pajamas but had a change of clothes. Sarah comes up to me and says, "Please don't be mad." A second later, the eldest son, Sam, came dressed in a full gothic outfit, chains, black makeup, and spiked dyed hair. Normally, they dress slightly goth, like they prefer black but nothing crazy. Never before have they even gone close to this. They said something like, "Hope you like the outfit. I'm wearing this for the picture." I forgot what I said, but it was barely anything. Probably a grunt or, uh-huh. I say to Sarah, "They can't wear that in the picture." I don't say anything else. My wife gives me the same look, but then walks away. I get back to cooking for the 20 plus people. Picture time comes and we take the group photo with Sam included. Then I tell Sam I would like a few pictures without them in it. They try to get argumentative, and I said along the lines of, "You know that I asked people to dress nicely just for the group photo. You purposely dressed like this to spite me, and I have no idea why." It was awkward, but Sarah told Sam to step aside and we took the photo. Day goes on fine, and I know people probably talked. Today, I saw some Facebook posts mentioning the situation, and it's annoying me. I stand by my decision and not sure if I'll respond privately or not. So, am I the jerk for kicking Sam out of the family photo because of the way they dressed? Final update. My wife emailed all of the pictures from Thanksgiving. Only sent the family photo with Sam to everyone and not the one excluding Sam. Sam was doing the air guitar in a funny face. Someone pointed out Sam was also doing a gesture at the camera with their strumming hand. One person in the email group requested the other family photo because Sam had done this towards the camera. My wife sent it to everyone in the email. Sam decided to call me instead of waiting for Friendsgiving this weekend. They wanted to explain what happened. They thought it was funny. I asked people to dress nice and wanted to play a prank on me and put it on TikTok. They took a part of their Halloween outfit and modified it to be a full goth outfit with crazy hair and makeup. They wanted to get a reaction out of me for a TikTok video before changing into their normal clothes for pictures. Sam hoped my wife or I would be really upset and make a scene. Neither of us did, even during the photo shoot. It was just slightly awkward, so Sam decided not to put up the video. I did find out that he used the costume to scare some of the younger kids, who are about 1 to 4 years old, and did put those on TikTok. Sam's mom made them take those down. We didn't see them because we don't have TikTok. Sam arrived and I didn't say much because I was busy cooking and confused and annoyed. They decided to keep the outfit on until I said something. Sam did help me peeling potatoes and other stuff, but I never mentioned the outfit. They thought it was a game of chicken at that point. It got until a little before dinner and I pulled everyone together to start pictures. Sam was surprised because we had done pictures after dinner the last 2 years. They came up to ask how their outfit was and I just said fine. I don't really remember this part. So they kept the joke going. Sam said they assumed there would be another group photo later. Well, we got to the group photo and Sam kept egging on the joke, hoping to get some big reaction out of me. After taking the group photo with Sam included, I just told them to step out for a few pictures. Sam's mom also told them to step aside. They decided to not egg me on in front of everyone and jumped out of the picture. Pictures happened, we ate dinner, and then Sam changed and dressed as they normally do the next 2 days. They later realized there wasn't going to be another group photo. They felt awkward and just didn't bring it up the rest of the weekend. They decided not to use the videos for TikTok. Sam apologized because they knew my wife was big into photo albums and put me in a weird spot. I accepted and told them I'm going to post everything on Facebook later. Sam asked me not to because it's really embarrassing. We're okay now and my wife doesn't care because we got the pictures with and without Sam. She will put both in the photo album. I removed the edit with Sam's mom because it was just repeating the story. You're the jerk. So you're saying that you didn't have a rebellious teenager phase? It's a family picture. Not one family is this perfect little image that you're trying to force. In the future, anyone looking at that photo would have probably just said, "Yup, that's so-so," and moved on. But way to say, "You're not welcome in the family," to a 14-year-old just trying to either A, be rebellious, or B, express themselves. Edit. I realize OP has edited his post multiple times and that the 14-year-old was doing it for clout. This comment was made prior to the edits. Sorry, but for all the people saying that you're the jerk, first, OP is the host of this event, cooking for 20+ people. Their home, their rules. Requesting nice outfits usually doesn't mean eccentric behavior. I'm gonna get downvoted, but not the jerk. Even their mom said, "Don't be mad," so she knew they were pushing the limits. Mom of the kid can instill some manners about being guests when OP is doing that much work cooking. You sound exhausting, and I don't think I'd even want to be in your family picture. Guess what? This is reality. No family is perfect. Your perfectly staged photos don't allow people to be themselves. You're the jerk. If Sam really dressed that way to spite you, imagine how confused he would have been if you just didn't comment and allowed the pictures to be taken as usual, showing them that their ploy didn't work. You messed up. On the other hand, if Sam dressed that way because they liked those clothes and felt good in them and was excited to be photographed with the family that way, you were rude and excluded a kid who just discovered their sense of style. You messed up. Either way, you're the jerk. Not the jerk. The problem with all you commenters is that you have no values. You don't have respect for yourselves or others. You have no morals. All you do is relate yourselves to the most victimized people in these stories, so you side with them every time. You do this because in your mind, you are also a victim, and you think the world is so unfair because you don't get everything you want handed to you. So it makes you feel good to bash people who actually have morals and values, like OP. You are all the most delusional bunch of people I've ever come across, and you really make me lose faith in humanity. I normally don't reply to people who say things as stupid as what you said, but let me lay out some facts for you very quickly. 1. So we have no morals and values? But you think some loser who excludes his nephew from a family photo does? Please. 2. Not everyone on here claims to be a victim. That's all in your head. Projection much? I mean, most of us have probably been through some crap, and you have no right whatsoever to tell us whether or not we are victims, so you can seriously buzz off with that crap. 3. We're delusional? That's laughable. You're the one passing judgment on a bunch of strangers that you know literally nothing about. If anyone here is delusional, it's you. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or not? Please let us know. My parents never would have let me pull a stunt like that growing up. My son wants me to downgrade the family hike on Christmas for his out-of-shape girlfriend. Ever since I can remember, our family has always gone on a hike the morning of Christmas. We did it all through my childhood. My husband's family did it. My friends' families are similar, though for some it's just a walk, or some go into the city and do an easy 5 or 10K run. My son, Porter, has been dating Emily for the past 6 months. I'm happy she's going to join us. They're coming from the city about 3 hours away, so they'll be staying overnight. I've met Emily before, and I think she's a great match for Porter. I know there's all that hoopla about the mother-in-law and daughter-in-law dynamic, and I just have no time for any of that. If Porter likes her and she treats him with kindness, and he the same, who am I to complain? I Skyped with them on Thanksgiving, just making plans for who's bringing what for Christmas, gifts and such, and I mentioned that she should remember to bring her hiking boots, but we'll have plenty of yak tracks if the trails are icy. She was visibly confused and asked what for, so I explained. She got quiet and asked if she had to. I said no, of course she doesn't have to, but we've always done this, and I was surprised Porter didn't mention it. The next day, Porter called and explained that Emily is not in great shape and would struggle with keeping up, even on one of the easier trails nearby. He said that maybe we can just do a nice short family walk in the neighborhood this year so she feels more welcome. I said that maybe the two of them can hang back and enjoy a nice quiet morning before the festivities begin while the rest of us go for the hike. I remember being young with Porter's father and how special those early Christmas mornings always were. Plus, this will be her first time with the family, and it's going to be a lot. Porter got annoyed and said I'm not hearing him. He said that he really thinks we need to cut the hike down or make different plans. I told him in return that this is a family tradition that goes back for years, and changing it for one person isn't fair to the rest of the family. We're at a stalemate. I even said that if they hang back for the morning, I'd be happy to go on a nice walk with Emily and Porter later in the day during a quiet moment. He said I'm still not hearing him. Am I the jerk for not being willing to downgrade the hike to a little stroll around the neighborhood? Not the jerk. You offered a choice of doing a walk around the neighborhood later or just letting them hang back. Porter is being ridiculous for thinking that everyone should change plans for his new girlfriend. Porter is not hearing Mom. The answer is no. She's not going to change the hike for one person. I don't understand why Porter is making this a huge issue. Just hang back, do an easy walk or whatever they want. It really shouldn't be that big of a deal. Not the jerk. Not the jerk. You heard him. You also stated that they could go on a short walk after dinner. He's not willing to compromise. Love. You shouldn't have to change years of tradition for one person, and it's okay if you don't. Am I the jerk for using flashcards to explain to my brother and his wife why they can't bring their miracle baby to my wedding? My fiance, female, and I, male, are getting married. We've decided wedding's gonna be child-free just to keep it more organized and contained. My brother, Chris, and his wife have a 3-year-old son who everyone calls Miracle or Rainbow Baby. He came after several failed pregnancies that lasted for years. When they found out that my nephew was included in the no kids rule, they tried to convince me to make an exception for him. Chris told me his son is a miracle baby, and his presence at the wedding will bring blessings for me and my fiance. I refused and said no, the wedding is child-free. His wife kept sending my fiance pics of my nephew when he was months old. What does that mean? I told them no and to stop. My brother told me this might cause a rift in our relationship. I again said no and explained that the wedding is child-free. He asked again and pointed out how his baby is different since he's a rainbow, a miracle baby. I again said no and explained that this wedding is child-free. They brought it up when they visited at my home, and I knew they weren't going to stop, so I had made flashcards in advance with the phrase, "The wedding is child-free, period," and I pulled them out and started slowly showing them the flashcards one by one in this order. The wedding, with a sticker of the bride and groom, is child, with a sticker of a baby, free, with a sticker of a no sign, period, with a huge black dot sticker. They both were stunned. I asked if they get it now, and Chris lost his mind. His wife had already grabbed her stuff and walked out. Chris called me a jerk for doing this and said that I disrespected him, his wife, and their son, who's my one and only nephew. He rushed out after we argued. My fiance saw the whole thing and thought that it was funny, but my parents and Chris are livid beyond measure. They're telling everyone about the amount of disrespect and mockery I had displayed towards them, and I'm being told to fix it now. Well, I suppose you could have used hand puppets instead, but flashcards seem to have gotten the message across. It makes me insane how some parents think their little bundle of joy should be allowed anywhere, anywhen, anytime, and that no never applies to them. It's pretty clear that they were going to run this horse right up to the altar. Not the jerk. Not the jerk, you are a legend. I'm glad that Chris and his wife managed to get pregnant, but their child is no more special than anyone else's, which is to say, not special at all except to the child's parents. This miracle and rainbow baby stuff, well again, I'm glad they got their kid after difficulties. A lot of folks don't get that opportunity. But the kid isn't Christ reborn, and they need to get that out of their thick skulls. The flashcards, honestly, are a solid way of showing them that. If the rest of the family gives you trouble, be sure to let the others with kids know that they think their miracle child is more special than their normal, mundane kids, Chris's words, and watch their support dry up. Exactly. There are literally millions of rainbow babies out there. Theirs is no more special than any other. I say not the jerk. They did not respect your choice. I would honestly hire security because I bet money they will try to show up with their baby and be like, she can't do anything because we are here with her. I say hire security and make sure they know anyone who brings a kid will not be admitted. And you will have security there to be sure that this rule is followed. Plus, what you did sounds absolutely hilarious. Couple decided to steal a deed parking space. I work in a place with a deeded garage parking. Had one sweet old lady, I'll call her Granny, who owned a Mini Cooper. Another couple who rented a unit did not have a parking spot and took to planting their economy car in her spot. When Granny complained, the renters would just say they were entitled because there were so many empty parking places, so Granny could park somewhere else. What do they not get about deeded parking? This continued until the day the sweet old lady decided to not be so sweet, pulled her car in front of the two renters' car and parked bumper to bumper. Put a note on their car saying, "Parking in this space is $150 a day. Please leave a check with the concierge." So the two renters showed up at my desk complaining about their car being blocked off and actually expected me to tow Granny's car off. I had to re-explain that deeded parking meant that I could not tow a car from Granny's spot any more than I could rearrange furniture in her apartment. It's her land, she owns it. You abandon your car on her property. Talk to Granny. So after 20 minutes or so of this renter's crap, I called Granny, even though it was early in the morning. She came down to the desk in her housecoat and slippers with her dog in tow. They begged her to move her car. Granny told them it would be $150. Leave the check with the concierge. They kept complaining. Then she told them it would be an extra $50 for waking her up in the morning because they claimed an emergency. Then they asked her how long before she left the garage. Granny told them, "Dearies, I'm retired. I'll leave my spot when I'm ready. And the price just went up to $150 a day plus $50 for waking me, and that will be in cash. Leave the envelope with the concierge. I'm walking my dog, and I'll move my car when I have your rental fee in hand." Not only did the renters not park in her spot, but word got around, and I didn't have to deal with that issue for another 2 years. Teacher threw away my niece's lunch, so I picked her up and took her to get a Happy Meal. I, 20 female, am babysitting my niece, who's 4, for the week while my sister is on a business trip. My niece misses her mom, so to cheer her up, I put a couple treats in her lunch. Her lunch was a turkey and cheese sandwich with cucumbers and avocado. I also drew some cartoon characters on it with edible markers. Carrot sticks and ranch, apple slices, cookie, fruit snacks, brownie, and a juice box. Clearly not the healthiest, but also this is a special treat, and she has all 5 food groups. I dropped my niece off at 9, and at 10, snack time, I got a call from the teacher saying I had to drop off a new lunch because my niece's was too unhealthy. I told her to give my niece the fruits or vegetables if she has a problem with the treats, and she told me she threw away the lunch because it was distracting to the other kids. I decided to call the office and tell them that I needed to pull my niece out for an appointment at 11, lunch is at 11:30, and that she'd be back by the end of lunch. So at 11, I picked her up. We got Happy Meals, cookies, fruit snacks, and milkshakes. Then at 12, end of lunch, I dropped her off with her Happy Meal box and her almost finished milkshake. Teacher saw this and was fuming. I guess she told my sister what happened because shortly after, I got a call from my sister saying I was being petty and should have just dropped off a new sandwich. Am I the jerk for pulling my niece out and filling her up on sugar because her teacher threw away her lunch? Not the jerk. That teacher is the jerk for throwing away perfectly good food, no matter what. Not the jerk. So a cookie and a brownie means that you tossed the whole lunch? The teacher was out of line. Not the jerk. What kind of power trip do you have to be on to throw away a 4-year-old's lunch? Am I the jerk for selling a house that was left to me? I, male 24, grew up next to a sweet old lady. Her husband passed and she lived alone. When I was 11, she offered me $50 a week to walk her dog since she was unable to. This ended up turning into me helping her around for some cash. I would mow her lawn, fix up things around the house, and buy her groceries. She paid me good money and she was a kind person. Eventually, I realized how lonely she was, so I would often go over to her house and spend time with her since her actual family lived far away. Towards the end of high school, she started losing it, and she'd forget things. I felt bad accepting money and started making up excuses and would lie to get out of her paying me. I think she realized I was avoiding her payments and felt bad. At the end of my senior year, she wrote me a check for my college tuition. Keep in mind, my tuition was close to $25,000 a year, and she paid for a full year. I tried to not accept the gift, but she insisted that I accept. After I went to college, she hired a caregiver and didn't really need me, but I still tried to visit. Well, this year she passed, and I was on her will. She gave me her home and some money. Her immediate family fought hard to get the home from me, but I fought hard to keep it. I offered for them to visit and grab any family keepsakes, but after that, the home was mine. I decided I'm selling the home and moving across the country for a new job opportunity. Her family came at me hard and demanded I sell it to them. I told them I'll hear their offers, and if it's close to my asking price, I'd give them priority. Their offer was 70% of asking price after I did $35,000 in renovations. I rejected them and sold the house to another buyer. I now have to deal with like 20 angry emails a week, claiming I'm selling away the house they grew up in to a random. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. You offered them priority to buy it and they lowballed you. It was left to you and you can do whatever you want with it. Not the jerk. It was her home and money, and I'm sure she had her reasons for not leaving it to her family. Perhaps they should reflect on why they weren't willed her house. Not the jerk. Legally, it was your house. They wanted it for sentimental value, which is understandable. But in the end, you were lowballed on their offer. You sold the house to someone who offered a better price. Edit. If they continue to contact you about the house and whatnot, take legal action. They are harassing you. Nephew threw a huge tantrum because I didn't give him my son's toy. We hosted Thanksgiving at my place. My brother, his wife, and their almost 4-year-old son were among the guests. As people were leaving, my brother asked if my nephew could take home one of my 2-year-old son's toy trucks. My nephew had been playing with it nonstop since they arrived and wanted to keep it. My brother said that he'd replace the toy if I told him where I got it. I told my brother that I'd be happy to give him a link to the store where I bought it, but I would not give the toy to him then and there. I refused for 2 reasons. Firstly, my brother/sister-in-law have a terrible habit of giving my nephew everything he asks for. He is way too old for that. Secondly, I don't want to reinforce in my nephew that it's okay to just take things he wants. My brother said that my nephew would throw a tantrum if he didn't get the toy then and there, and that everything would be easier if I just let him take the toy and get sent a replacement in the mail. I told my brother that I would not be an enabler for my nephew's bad behavior and that it's my brother and sister-in-law's problem if he throws a tantrum. Of course, the inevitable happened. My nephew started shrieking inconsolably at the top of his lungs, and my brother, sister-in-law, and nephew had to leave. Later that evening, I got an angry text from my brother saying that my nephew screamed his head off for the entire 3-hour car ride home and only stopped screaming after he literally passed out from exhaustion. He said that the tantrum was my fault since it would have been completely avoided if I had just given my nephew the toy, and accused me of backseat parenting, since in his words, it's not my place to set an example for his son. My wife thinks we should have just handed the toy over to make things easier, especially since our son has a ton of toys and is not particularly attached to that specific truck and would not have noticed it missing for just a couple days. I still maintain that it's well within my rights to set an example for my nephew, even if it goes against my brother and sister-in-law's parenting style of coddling their son, and that the tantrum is 100% a result of their terrible parenting habits. Not the jerk. Your brother may think that it's easier to give in to his son's tantrums, but he's starting to reap what he's sown now. The 3-hour tantrum is his own fault for never teaching the kid proper boundaries and for teaching him that his parents would give him anything if he'd just throw a tantrum. Everyone sucks here. Your brother and his wife were absolutely in the wrong for making their kid's behavior your fault. Nephew's behavior is not your fault, no matter your decision about the toy. Where I do think you are a little bit the jerk is that you took this as a chance to berate your brother's parenting. You clearly have opinions about his parenting skills, which means you've seen this happen over the years, and thus have had plenty of time to talk to him about it in a less charged environment. The end of a holiday meal, where they are staring down the face of a 3-hour drive with a tantrum-prone child, isn't really the time to give advice and have it be listened to and taken to heart. I think you were right to not hand over your kid's toy, and your wife is probably sick of hearing you complain about your brother, so I can see where she's coming from. Am I the jerk for refusing to make a $120 cut of steak well done? So, we did a bit of an extravagant Friendsgiving this year, as I lucked into a strip loin of A5 Wagyu for a price that was unorthodox levels of cheap. My friend works for a high-end meat distributor and received it as a gift. It was a tight-knit event with only 10 of us there, mostly couples, including my friend who only started dating a girl within the last couple months. We had an array of dishes, but I was responsible for cooking the meat. Steak is about the closest thing I have to a religion, and I take it very seriously. The average steak for me takes about 4 to 5 hours to prepare and cook, from the sous vide to the cast iron to plate, though sometimes I take as much as 3 to 4 months butter aging or dry aging my meats to be certain that they are perfect. These were genuine A5, so I only sous vide them after cutting them into 2-inch steaks. There was pretty perfectly enough for one each, but I also made jerk chicken, mandarin duck breast, and a nice cut of cherry jalapeno salmon. I had quite the spread. I sous vide them to medium rare to be sure the fat was well rendered, but informed them that if absolutely necessary, I'd bring them up to medium on request. Can we get some Karens or Kyles to tell Redderboy how to correctly pronounce these words? Please do. It helps out in the algorithm. Well, here comes the new girl to the group. She sees the first person cut into their steak and sees pink, and she is just mortified. Immediately, she starts talking about eating raw meat and stresses that the steak should be brown all the way through, or else you'll get sick. I informed her that this wasn't the case and that these steaks were actually cooked to the ideal temperature for the cut. She immediately demanded that I cook hers till it was brown all the way through, and I firmly said, not a chance. She proceeded to get angry and yelled that it was her steak and she should have it how she liked. I told her that there were plenty of other meats to choose from, as well as a plethora of side dishes that she could have, but her steak was not being made well done in my house. She said, "Jerk." Then she got up and started to stick the steak in the microwave. I got up and grabbed it out of her hand first, at which point half the steak fell onto the ground. My dogs quickly got to it, to which I said, well, at least it went to someone who wouldn't complain on a good steak. From there was definitely tension from that end of the table. They ate a little bit, then hurriedly left. Since then, my longtime friend and his new girlfriend have blocked me on social media and my phone number. They've even gone so far as to block the rest of the people at the table and cut off all ties. Yesterday, I received a PayPal invoice from my old friend for $25 that just said, "Pay for dry cleaning of her dress." I don't think anything actually spilled on her. I think it's just more drama, but as of now, I'm ignoring it and, unfortunately, probably washing my hands clean of an old friend. Am I the jerk here? Edit. I should state that a menu was sent weeks in advance with the express point that if someone wanted their steak cooked to a higher temperature, I'd really go to the grocery store and get some USDA Prime for them. Everyone sucks here. She was a terrible guest, and you were an obnoxious host. Don't get me wrong, I can't even eat meat above a medium rare temp, but when you choose to cook for someone, you don't get to dictate how they eat it. You're gifting them a dish, and they can do how they will with it, in the manner they enjoy it. The fact you'd rather have a dog eat the meat than the guest is pretty telling of how inconsiderate and controlling of a host you are. You're the jerk, assuming this is even real, because I can't fathom someone being this much of a jerk to their friends. You weren't the one eating the steak, she was. She can have it however she wants. The fact that you not only refused to cook it to her request, but then grabbed it away from her when she attempted to cook it further herself makes you a complete and total jerk in this situation. And the fact that you'll give a $120 steak to a dog before you let a person eat it well done is just ridiculous. Won't let me meet your boyfriend? Consider your date canceled. I'm a single dad, and I have been for about 9 years now. My daughter is 13, and she's the single greatest thing to ever happen to me. About a week ago, she said that this boy in her class wanted to know if she would be up to grab a pizza on that Saturday. We don't really do anything for Thanksgiving, so logistically it worked out well. She agreed to it. When she told me about this, I said that I wanted to meet this guy. She immediately got annoyed and asked why. I said that if a guy is asking my daughter out, I just want to be able to put a face to a name. I promised her it was not going to be some goofy dad interrogates boyfriend and acts all scary tactic. I told her to tell him I wanted to meet him and to just say hi. She tells me that she told him. Saturday comes and I see her heading towards the door. I tell her to hold up and I ask where her date is. She says that he's outside and that they're going to bike ride to the pizza place. I ask why he's not coming to the door. She first tells me he's nervous and doesn't know what he'd say to me. I told her that nice to meet you is a good start. Her story changes and she tells me that he just doesn't see why I have to meet him. I reiterated my why to her and asked her to go get him. She breaks down and tells me that she lied to me. She never told him I wanted to meet him because she thought it was stupid that I wanted to meet him. I told her to text him that the date was off. She said I wasn't allowed to do that. I asked her again to tell him. She started getting teary-eyed, texted him, told me I was mean and that she hated me and went to her room. When I told my sister what happened, she thought I was in the wrong and said I should have just let my daughter go on the date. Am I the jerk? You're the jerk. I know your intentions were good, but no daughter wants a dad to be up in their business when dating. I understand, truly, you are trying to be a protective parent, but the way you went about it was terrible. Turning pizza into a guy dating my daughter was mistake number one. You turned a very casual hangout into something more serious than even they were ready to attach to it. Then telling your daughter to tell the guy you wanted to meet him was mistake number two. That doesn't mean you couldn't have met him any more than you could meet any other of her friends before they hang out. But making it this formal put too much pressure on the situation. Finally, when your daughter broke down and was honest with you, you punished her by canceling the date. Why would she ever be honest with you again? Need I remind you, all of this could have been avoided if you had simply walked outside with her, said hi to the date, and then left them alone. I know you were trying to be a good parent, but trust me, next time your daughter gets a date, she won't even tell you because she's learned that it's better not to. Edit to add. OP, for the future, maybe consider how you would have approached this if it was just your daughter hanging out with a new friend. That should show you that there are ways to have safety measures and meet who she's hanging out with without doing the whole, what are your intentions with my daughter thing. I completely understand where you're coming from. I just want to share a different perspective. I was 13 and a freshman in high school. If I ever wanted to hang out with friends, even if my mom had met them before, she would need their number and to meet their parents and get their numbers as well. I was honestly shocked that I was ever even invited to just hang out with people. I have anxiety and I get nervous a lot. So when my mom told me I would have to get all of the information, I just never asked to hang out. I never went out or did anything. I was always too nervous to ask or what rules my mom would put in place. I also had great grades and never got in trouble. I still have a hard time making friends, and yes, it's due to me and how nervous I get meeting new people. I would have liked to have actually done things and had fun while in school. Your daughter and her safety comes first, which I completely understand, but you could have opened the door yourself and met the boy. Kids get nervous over things like this. I would have been terrified and thought that you would have said no matter the circumstances, even if it was a good kid outside the door. You're the jerk. My dad did the same thing when I was growing up, and guess what happened? I stopped telling him anything and everything. Like it or not, You're a controlling parent, and don't be surprised when your daughter goes no contact with you. You'll feel bad when she ends up like me because of the controlling parents I had. I'm now almost 30, but homeless throughout most of my 20s and have had 4 babies, all of which I had to give up because I didn't have adequate housing according to the state. The struggles that I've gone through are not my fault, but all go back to my failed parents and how they always had to stick their nose in my business. To be honest, I hope your daughter ends up worse than I have, just so you can see what happens when you're a bad parent. Dang. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk for wanting to meet him or not? Please let us know. I can't think of many places that are worse to seek parenting advice from than Reddit. If you don't agree with me, leave right now. In June of 2021, I joined a tech startup, last mile grocery and food delivery app, as financial controller. I was told my task was to bring the gross profits into black within a year and before next round of investment and fundraising. The senior team comprised of me, Group CFO, COO, and head of grocery. The CEO was stationed outside in another country. The CEO comes to the country within a month of my joining, but does not bother to meet me. I say, okay, no problem. Keep your head down and do what you're tasked with. Within 2 months, I have the grips on operations and financials, and I've laid down my plan with Group CFO and he agrees to it. I make some changes in my team and I get to working on fixing things. During October, one of our competitors raises $85 million in investments and our CEO is irked. He comes again and starts an impromptu investment round. The conditions are better than before, so we get an offer of $50 million because our overall plan was a lot smaller and more realistic than our competitor. The CEO rejects the offer. He needs an offer of at least $100 million to beat the competitor. Luckily, we get offered $200 million, but the CEO refuses, citing this is greater than what I need, and goes back without accepting anything. Come February, Group CFO suddenly quits, but I knew he quit since our funds were depleting rapidly and the economic conditions in the country and globally were getting worse. I have an emergency meeting with COO and grocery head and tell them that we need to rationalize our expenses further, and this is the plan, according to which we will be profitable by June 2022. They agree to it, and I get to work with my team. The CEO again does not talk to me, and the CFO post remains vacant despite me being next in line and eligible for it. Come March 2022, my plan is on track, and we are expecting profitability a month earlier in May of 2022. I plan to take a week-long vacation and travel abroad with my spouse. In the 3rd day of vacation, I get a text from COO that I need to come back as something has happened. I tell him I'll come back as planned and not to worry. I come back and find out that the supply chain team made an error and bought inventory $30 million more than planned for the festive season coming up in May. In my absence, the grocery head gave the go-ahead without consulting me, and the error was only identified once the vendor started fulfilling the order. This has shook our overall plan, and our cash funds are at bottom. Mr. CEO comes to know about this. I was the one to inform him, and he immediately comes down and started literally going off on me and the other members of the team verbally. This is the first ever face-to-face meeting with me. I was quite taken aback by his rudeness and hurt as he put all the blame on me, saying I am the CFO, when I was never appointed as such, so no payments or purchases were approved by me. They were being approved by COO and head of grocery. This verbal mistreatment goes on for about a week, during which I had broken down twice in front of my wife, as I had never faced such BS before in my career, and I had worked really hard to bring the company to where it was at that point. The CEO warns us that whoever is found guilty of negligence will be fired on the spot. This is where the malicious compliance begins. I prepare detailed documents pointing out my plan and who approved the extra purchase and how I was consulted only after the error had occurred. I even prepared a plan to sell off the excess inventory and bring the money back into the fold. I try to reach him to explain, but he brushes me off every time, saying, "You cannot be right." After 7 days, the CEO calls us in the office on a weekend. I arrive and head of grocery is there. They are arguing and it's getting heated up. It gets so heated that the head of grocery shouts back and leaves, citing that he quits. As soon as he leaves, the CEO pounded his fist on the table and shouted, "If you don't agree with me, leave right now. Only I know how to run this company, and if you think I cannot work without you, think again." The moment I heard these words spewing out of his mouth, I switched to autopilot. I type in my resignation email to him right then and there, get up and say to him, Please check your email. My notice starts now." I leave the building before he could respond. Immediately, I call up one of my ex-bosses/mentor and tell him that I need to meet him. We meet, and within a week, we plan to start our own consultancy firm, and 6 months from then, our firm has started to grow. We're working on our startup, setting up another business, and managing top-tier clients. Then, I get a message from that CEO through the COO after a few months of my leaving. "Hey, we need your help managing the books and finances. Our position is really bad." I simply say, "The CEO won't agree with what I have to do to fix the company, and I don't work with clients who don't agree with me." Am I the jerk for telling my sister nobody was interested in her PhD research? My sister, who's 34, and I, 31 female, come from a working-class family. Nobody in our family has higher than a high school education, save for us. I have a bachelor's, and my sister is currently working on her PhD. Obviously, we're both proud of this, but my sister often brags to an extent that many in our family find uncomfortable or discouraging, and she talks down to the people around her. When she began her program, she explained it in very technical terms that confused our aunt. When she was asked to clarify, my sister made a fuss about how it was so easy for her to understand, and she forgets that not everyone can wrap their heads around it. It's been an issue since she started her master's, and I've admittedly been at my wit's end with her for quite a while. I hosted Thanksgiving this year. When we were eating, my sister was asked about her research, and she went on a long, complicated spiel about her work. She was missing context, pulling out every 10-cent word, getting super technical, and under-explaining every concept. She talked for about 10 minutes straight, barely pausing for questions or comments. It dominated conversation. Eventually, I interrupted her and tried asking our dad about his work. My sister interrupted him and said she wasn't finished, then continued talking. I told her I was finished listening to her and that she could talk all she wanted, but she'd need to do it in another room. She made some comments about my hosting and continued on. I stopped her again and told her that nobody was interested and she needed to be quiet, which she did. It was admittedly extremely awkward and quiet, and my husband decided to just plow on and make conversation with an aunt of mine. After that, conversation carried on as usual, with my sister being very, very quiet. Afterwards, our parents scolded me for being rude, but said my sister was being over the top, but I should have just let her talk. A few of our other relatives thanked me for cutting her off. Her fiancé called me yesterday morning and said I embarrassed my sister and I made her feel ashamed. He implied I was jealous of her success and asked me to formally apologize to her. I said I'd apologize to her, but I wouldn't mean it, and he hung up on me. I've thought it over, and I can see how my approach was wrong, but I genuinely did not see any other option at the time. Always willing to learn, though, and seeking a new perspective. Am I the jerk for telling my sister nobody was interested in her PhD research? Everyone sucks here. Your sister needs to know how to explain her doctoral work to a lay audience if she has any hope of passing her dissertation committee. She also needs to learn how to craft an elevator sentence. She also needs to learn how to take a hint gracefully. You need to stop being jealous of her success. Conscious of it or not, jealousy and resentment oozes out of this entire post. Regardless of how long she droned on and how rude it was of her to stop you from talking with your dad, the general core of this post isn't really centered on that, but your overall worldview on her academic career. I don't think OP sounds jealous. I think she just doesn't want to hear about all that crap. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her sister? Please let us know. Sometimes it takes drastic measures to get certain people to just shut up. A very expensive check. This malicious compliance is not my own. It was related to me by my mother many decades ago, but it's also not hers. She just got to play her part in this story. But since she passed decades before Reddit existed for her to share it with you wonderful people, I'll pass it on for her. This is a case of an intended malicious compliance being countered by an even more malicious compliance. My mother is, at this time, a manager in the central processing office of a now defunct major regional bank, easily the largest bank in our region back in the day. She receives a rather odd check for processing and refuses to run it until she has the full story on what's happening. So here's what she learns. A rancher has been in a land dispute with one of his neighbors, and it has not gone amicably. We are not privy to the exact nature of the issue, and it seems to have something to do with water rights. Either way, it ends up in court. And after a long, hard-fought battle of legal wills, The rancher loses and is ordered to pay a certain amount of damages to his neighbor by a certain date. Well, that's not a happy thing for the rancher, so he decides that while he must pay, there's absolutely nothing in the court order that says he has to make it easy on his adversary. Malicious compliance engaged. He shaves a spot on the rump of one of his cows and carefully writes out a check for the full amount of the court-ordered damages on the skin of the bovine. He then has one of his trucks deliver the cow to his neighbor to settle the account. A live cow. After checking with the bank, the neighbor concludes that it's perfectly legal for the rancher to write a check on anything, and the rancher makes it perfectly clear that this is the only way he intends to settle the debt. But just like folks who decide to settle an annoying bill with thousands of coins sometimes find themselves victims of their own malicious intent, the neighbor's malicious compliance trumps the rancher's. The neighbor loads the cow onto one of his trucks and takes it to the rancher's bank, the bank of issuance, and cashes it against a cashier's check made out to him for the same amount. This he then deposits at his own bank with no difficulty or challenge. Meanwhile, the rancher's bank has to order a truck and a driver to deliver the cow check to its central processing office, several hours' drive away. This is where my mother comes into the story. She has to cancel the check and process it. She uses a paper substitute to run through the computer system for it, just like they do for any checks that come in that are too badly wrinkled or damaged to run safely through the system. After the cow check has been properly processed and the money deducted from the rancher's account, she then opts to not store the check with his other canceled checks to return with his monthly statement, but instead orders it returned immediately to the rancher. And then, after the dust settles, the real fallout of the neighbor's malicious compliance is felt. Since the cow check involves a great deal of special handling at the bank's expense, the bank assesses appropriate fees that more than cover the expenses in processing it. If the neighbor cashes it at his own bank, he gets to pay those fees. But since he cashes it at the rancher's bank, the rancher now gets to pay what amounts to an additional 25% fee on top of the court-ordered settlement. The only cost to the rancher was 10 miles of gas for the round trip to the bank, a trip he routinely makes anyway, and the time spent getting the bank to verify that the cow check is a legitimate instrument that can be cashed. When telling this story, my mother tells me it's the most expensive check she ever processed. Am I the jerk for refusing to rearrange my work schedule to take my nephew to school? So I, 28 female, don't have kids, or want them frankly. I have a job that I like, work a shift that I like. I'm early mornings, 5 or 6 in the morning to 1 or 2 p.m. It took me a while to adjust to it, but now that I have a whole routine. I have a sister, Em, who's 31, and she has a 7-year-old son, Timmy. I've never been that aunt that borrows my nephew for the day to go do whatever. I mean, if he's around, I'll talk to him and play with him, and I buy him gifts for special occasions. I have friends that'll take their nieces or nephews a few times a month and go to movies, different events, take them shopping and spoil them. That's never been me. Well, Em called me Sunday and asked if I could take Timmy to school in the mornings for a while. I said, "What? No, I work early in the morning." She said, "But didn't you say you could go to second shift if you wanted to?" I can, but I don't want to. Apparently, Timmy's dad, Ryan, has to work third shift for a while, and Em doesn't want him driving Timmy to school after working because he'll be tired. Our parents can't because they work. Em used to work second shift and would take him to school, then Em would pick him up. Em works 6 to 2, but has a 30 to 45 minute commute. She wants me to go to second shift, and she'll drop him off by me, or I can come by them in the mornings, give him breakfast, get him ready, and take him to school. I asked for how long. She said she didn't know, but Ryan was going to try to move back to second shift when they have an opening. So could be a month, could be a year. I'm not going to switch to second and have Ryan go back to second in a month, and then I'm stuck on a shift that I hate. I can't just bounce back and forth either. I get an hour lunch break. It's usually 9 or 10, but I'm sure if I explain the situation, my boss would allow me to take it at 7:30. Then I could take Timmy to school and come back. I offered this to entitled mom, but she rejected it. Said that she's not leaving her 7-year-old home alone for 2 hours. I said, "But Ryan will be there." She claims since he might be asleep, Timmy would be on his own and that she doesn't want that. I said, "Well, that's all I can offer you. I'm not changing shifts. This is part of why I don't have kids, to avoid stuff like this," which he's 7, not 2, but whatever. Entitled mom went running to our mom, and my mom says I should be more willing to help my sister, and it'll give me the opportunity to spend time with Timmy. Family sacrifices for each other. An entitled mom might have to find a different job because I'm being stubborn. Am I the jerk for refusing to switch shifts? Wow, your sister sounds incredibly entitled. OP, don't cave to her demands. Stand your ground. 100% not the jerk. Old man parks his car in the middle of the road. Somehow, I'm at fault. Something bizarre happened to me yesterday. I was pulling into a parking lot when the car in front of me suddenly came to a complete stop in the middle of the lane. Its owner, an older guy, turned it off, got out, and started walking into the nearest store in the strip mall. He just parked his car in the middle of the lane. I could have gotten around it if I really tried, but it would be dangerously close to either his car or other parked cars. I lightly tapped on my horn twice at him, seeing as how I was essentially stuck now. He turned around, and I rolled my window down and said to him, "That's not a parking space." He dramatically pointed at my car and then did this "right this way" motion with both hands, aiming at the very narrow path that I guess he thought I should be able to get through. I repeated myself again. "Sir, that's not a parking space. I can't get around you." Him. "Why is it that one of you people every time just go around?" So he's done this before? Me. "Sir, what are you doing? That's not a parking space. I need you to move." Him. "I need you to mind your own business." Me. "Come on, you can't park there. Please just move your car." At this point, his lips were doing that weird shake that old people do when they hang their mouths open. I guess he thought he was being intimidating. He stepped up to my window and yelled, "You wanna make me?" Okay, so he's done this before, and he's being an aggressive jerk. Now I've read on here where other people have interacted with older Karens, and there's apparently a card that you can play that bypasses this sort of attitude. Me. "Sir, are you okay? Do you know where you are?" Him. "What?" Me. "Are you with someone? Is there someone who's supposed to be helping you today?" "What are you?" "Do you need help? It sounds like you don't know where you are, and I'm worried for you. Is there anyone I can call for you to help you?" I think he caught on to me at this point, because he switched back from confused to being angry again. Him. "I don't know. Is there anyone I can call for you?" Is that somehow a threat? I don't know. Me. "Sir, it's okay. Don't worry. You just stay right there, and I'll call someone who can come help you. Don't worry, it'll be okay. Just don't move, and I'll call for an ambulance." At this point, I backed into a parking space that had opened behind me and pulled out my phone. I really was going to call 911, but only because he was too confrontational to be left unattended in public. Of course, as with most bullies, the moment they realize they don't have power over you, he gave up, muttered something, got back in his car and left. On my way out of the lot, I saw that he had miraculously found his way into a parking spot on the other side of the lot. Am I the jerk for refusing to order plain cheese pizza for my girlfriend? So, in short, my girlfriend gets off of work a few hours before I do, and she typically cooks for me, which I genuinely appreciate. Today, she was feeling lazy and didn't really have any ideas for dinner. No big deal. So I told her I had been craving pizza and wouldn't mind ordering that for dinner, and she agreed. I told her that I would order it before I left for work, so by the time I got home it would be there. She texted me back and said that's fine, but to please order cheese pizza. I asked her why, and she said she didn't really enjoy the toppings I usually get, which are super normal things like pepperoni or bacon. Mind you, this is the first time I'm hearing this. She's eaten pizza with these toppings before. So I'm like, okay, are there any toppings you'd like to eat on your pizza, as opposed to just having it plain? Because at that point, it's just not even worth getting pizza if you're not going to have any toppings on it. She said no, that she just wanted plain pizza. I told her, well, if I'm buying it, I'm going to get what I want on it, and suggested that she could just pick off the toppings if it bothered her that much, or that we could do a sort of half and half deal where half was cheese. Then she said that she could still usually tell or taste residual flavors or oil from the toppings when she did that, and didn't even want to do that, and said we could just order an entire other pie for her. Neither of us are going to eat an entire pie, so that just seems frivolous to me. So I said, let's just forget the pizza idea and scrap it as a whole. Then she started telling me that I was being a jerk and really inconsiderate, and I told her I sort of thought that she was being selfish a little bit, and now she's very upset with me and isn't speaking to me. Am I the jerk? You're the jerk. Like, there's different sizes of pizza you could have gotten, like 2 smalls or a medium and a small. It also seemed like you guys always order toppings and she kind of just dealt with it or just didn't say anything to start something. You could have just compromised and gotten this one is just cheese and then next time get one with toppings, kind of like in every other situation. You're the jerk. Just buy her a cheese pizza and yourself something else. Pizza is easy to reheat, so it's not like the leftovers are going to waste. Why are you making such a big fuss over this? You're the jerk, dude. It's a pizza. It's not like you're handcrafting a gourmet buffet. Just order 2 small ones instead of 1 big one. It's the least you can do, considering she's the one that's always cooking for you. I can't believe this was even an issue for you. Not the jerk. Imagine if the boyfriend was the one complaining instead of her. Let's imagine for a moment if a girl on Reddit posts this same story from her perspective about how her boyfriend is demanding she buy them just 1 cheese pizza because he doesn't like toppings. He then refuses to just pick off the toppings he doesn't like and gets an attitude with her about it. All you morons would be calling him a man-child and telling her to leave him. Another day, another fine example of the hypocrisy of you deluded failures. Ouch. Entitled mom demands to swap shifts with me because she has kids. Background: all persons here are nurses. We have a system in our hospital. Big shift changes, multiple days, must be done in the month before the new month. Single days just need some days in advance. Also, we have a system for the holidays. One year you work Christmas, the next year you work New Year's Eve and New Year's. As a young guy without kids, I mostly try to cover other people's Christmas for getting New Year's off. I mean, we celebrate with close family on Christmas Eve anyways. This year I had to work Christmas and asked around if anyone wanted to swap. One of my coworkers directly answered. She told me she would gladly work New Year's for me and I work Christmas for her. We talked to our charge nurse and gave green light and changed the schedule. She was happy to see her family after last year's Christmas was in lockdown, and I was happy to get hammered on New Year's Eve with my girlfriend and friends. But then today happened. Our entitled mom, or Nurse Karen, is one of my coworkers. She's okay at her job, although she complains when she can't leave on the dot. I never had any real problems with her. We just coexist. This happened on my break today. Nurse Karen: Hey, OP. Me: Oh, hi. I wasn't really paying attention. I ate my soup and browsed Reddit on my phone. Karen: Can I ask you something? Sure. So, I saw you and the other nurse swapped holidays. Me: Yeah? Well, I thought you could cancel it and cover my shift on Christmas. Me: No. What? Why? It's the same for you. You have your New Year's Eve off anyways. Me: Well, yeah, maybe. But the other nurse made plans with her family. Ugh, maybe. But I need Christmas off. I have kids, and she doesn't. Me: Yeah, maybe. But she has plans too. That's not fair. I had no chance to ask you first. Me: Yes, you had. I asked in our insert instant messenger name work group. I then showed her the message in the group. And sorry, who comes fast paints first. A saying in my language, not so good in English though. Ugh, that's so unfair. You both don't have kids, so Christmas isn't that important to you. It's a family holiday. Me: Yeah. The other nurse meets her family on Christmas. That's why I swapped with her. I give her my own copyrighted "Forget you, sweetie" smile that I got from working in that soul-sucking snake pit, aka my hospital. Ugh. She then stomped off. I just get back to Reddit and continue to eat my onion soup. A mistake, because onion breath and masks aren't a good match. The nurse I swapped holidays with told me that Nurse Karen tried to talk her out of it too, but she wouldn't budge either. She then tried to talk to our charge nurse, but that was in vain. Our momentary charge is a work friend of me, and we are both male nurses, so we both have a secret but sacred bond to have each other's backs. Karen is upset because no one wants to swap, but that's not my problem. Thanksgiving ruined and meal stolen by entitled parent. For context, you have my sister who's 30, my dad 62, my mom 65, and myself 34. The neighbor who's 37 and her kids ranging in ages from 17, the oldest son, to 9, the only daughter. Thanksgiving this year, my mom, a highly disabled and perfect mom in every sense of the word, spent 14 hours getting all the food prepared for everyone. She does this as a Christmas gift to us all. We buy everything, and she cooks most of the smaller things. We buy a pre-cooked ham to make things easier on her. Around 2 p.m., the neighbor and her 7 kids show up, asking if they could join since her husband left her and they have nowhere to go. He found out all but 1 kid weren't his and has fled the area. My mom tells them there isn't enough food to go around for more than the 5 of us. She keeps badgering my mom, all of this taking place while my dad, sister, wife, and I are grabbing last-minute things and a huge thank you gift for my mom. Eventually, the kids push in and start making their own plates. My mom is in tears and finally just moved away from the door and calls me immediately. We rush home to find that nearly all the food is gone via to-go boxes they brought with them, while they have gone home to eat our meal. My mom goes to lie down for a few and we call the police. An hour goes by and we wake my mom up when the police finally show up. We explain the situation to them, show them the Ring doorbell footage of them coming and going and what was said, and the police say it's her word against the entire clan of trash, since my mom moved aside to let them through. They leave without even letting us file a report, even having the nerve to tell us we shouldn't do anything since the woman is having a hard time and we should just be thankful we have each other for the holiday. On Saturday, all of us, mom included, are at the police station with pictures of the before and after of the meal, video with audio from the Ring doorbell, and wish to file charges against them for theft and elderly mistreatment and assault. The mom and her kids knocked my mom over on their way out. We also show the officer video of the interaction of the police response captured by my sister's phone. I'm just heartbroken as we spent all of our Thanksgiving in tears consoling my mom and making the best of what was left. Reply: this is terrible. I hope you pick a different day and have a Thanksgiving dinner all over again so you can properly celebrate and give thanks for each other. In the meantime, I'd put this story and the Ring footage on Nextdoor so all your neighbors can see who these pieces of crap are. OP: we had a small meal with what was left, which wasn't much. We are planning on having a Christmas dinner at my home the week before Christmas Day possibly, if everything goes as planned. People in the neighborhood we know well were given a copy of our written statement to the police department and a link to see both videos, the Ring footage and what my sister took when the authorities decided to show up. 3 of them provided the police with footage from their homes as well as letting us have a copy. You can clearly see what happened from the entire perspective of the footage we've pieced together. Due to legal advice, we can't show the footage online since it would show the identities of the minors involved. From my neighbor across the street's camera, you can see the entitled parent and her kids discussing something right before they walk up to the door. See all of the kids push past my mom as soon as the door opens, my mother disappear from the doorway in a single frame, and the entitled parent and kids exit the threshold of the doorway with arms full and briskly walk out of frame. Karen stole my cat, so I stole her back. I got Pebbles from a humane society when she was 2 months old. I love her with my whole heart. She's now 5 years old, soon to be 6. 14 months ago, I had to move to an apartment that didn't allow pets in the contract. I had no choice but to rehome Pebbles, and I was heartbroken. But my grandma ended up taking her from me, so it wasn't so bad, because I could visit Pebbles anytime. She was safe in a house, all indoors, and well taken care of. 3 months ago, Grandma passed. And of course, that was hard enough. But on top of that, Pebbles got grabbed without anyone's consulting me and brought to my uncle and aunt's house to live. They put her outside with their other farm cats. I drove out on my day off to see her, and she was looking scared and bedraggled. But they insisted that she was fine. I went home heartbroken and I was angry. Recently, I was able to move into a better apartment that's pet-friendly with a roommate. I asked if I could have Pebbles back, but my aunt said no, that my cousins, who are 15 and 18, have grown attached. But frankly, oh well. So I said, fine, okay. Then last week during work hours, I took off on my lunch break, drove to the farm while they were at work and school, found Pebbles, put her in my car, and drove home to my new apartment. It took them 2 days to even figure out that she was gone. Then, of course, my aunt called me and asked if I had taken Pebbles. I said yes. She started to yell, so I just said, she's my cat, and I gave her to Grandma for a while, not you, and then I hung up. I think I'm legally in the clear here because I took Pebbles back to the vet I took her to her whole life for a checkup, got her papers up to date, got her microchipped, and put her in my name. But my parents called me and told me that they were disappointed in me, that it was immature to steal Pebbles, and that the girls are apparently heartbroken. I'm sorry my cousins are sad, but I would do it again. Pebbles is my cat, and they weren't taking care of her correctly. I never wanted to give her up anyway. If I'm the jerk, that's fine. Not the jerk. Sounds more like you rescued your cat to me. Yes, putting a cat that's grown up indoors outdoors with other cats who are used to being outdoors is cruel. Cats are territorial and were probably quite hard on your cat. Not to mention that outdoor cats have a significantly shorter life expectancy than an indoor cat. OP did the right thing. She rescued Pebbles, and getting her chipped and vetted right away was exactly the right move. OP, I'm so glad you have your kitty back. Not the jerk. Am I the jerk for taking money from my wife's account to pay for my computer that she broke? My wife is a stay-at-home mom. She works hard taking care of our kids and maintaining our home. I do what we have agreed is a fair portion of the housework and all of the yard work. She has full access to all of our accounts except for my personal spending account. I put the exact same amount into her personal spending account, but I can only deposit, not withdraw. I have a home office, but I don't work from home. It's just a place I can go to sit and catch up on anything I might need to work from home on, and also play video games or play with my toys. My wife also has a room that's dedicated to her and her hobbies. I've asked her multiple times to please leave my room alone. I clean it myself, I take my dishes to the kitchen, and either wash them or place them in the dishwasher. I take out my own trash. When I play with my kids in my office, I clean up after all of us. When my wife joins me in my office for video games, I clean up afterwards. There's quite literally no reason for her to do anything in there when I am not in it. I do not have a lock on my door, but I do have my laptop password protected. I like to line up some of my collection of Lego minifigures by my screen on my laptop. I like to imagine that Batman and Spider-Man are watching me work. I know it's silly, but I like it. For some reason, my wife decided to go clean my office. I guess she needed to move my laptop, so she closed it. Not all the way, because my minifigures were in the way. When I came home, she told me what had happened. The screen was not working at all. I had to get my old monitor out and hook it up so I could check and see if anything else was busted. It was just the screen. I checked, and it would cost about $250 for parts and labor to replace my screen. So I decided to replace the laptop and use the old one with my old monitor for the kids. It was fine other than the non-working screen. The cost to replace my laptop was only $600. Yay, Black Friday. So I took $350 from my account and I took $250 from the money I was going to deposit into her personal account for December, and I got my new computer. This will in no way affect our budget for anything other than our own personal side projects and hobbies. I was looking forward to getting myself a new Lego set to work on with my kids over the holidays, but now I will have to rebuild one of my old ones with them, which is also fun. Well, now she's upset at me because she has to cut back on her fun stuff for December. She likes to have a spa day with her mom, for example. I said that I wasn't responsible for my computer being broken and that she 100% was. She said it was an accident and that I should forgive her. I said I wasn't upset, but that if she felt I should forgive her, then I fully forgive her, but she still has to help me pay for a new laptop. Am I the jerk? I did not just take her money. We talked about it first. She is still upset that I expect her to take responsibility. I did not make an unfair decision. We do not work that way. I think you are a bit of a jerk. She's a stay-at-home parent. She does not earn money that can be saved up for things like spa days with her mother. She relies on those funds that are budgeted for personal fun. It feels to me like you're treating her like a kid. How would you feel if you accidentally broke something she valued and she insisted you pay for it? If she had broken it intentionally, it would be one thing, but it was an accident and she was trying to be helpful by cleaning your office. It really does sound like a jerk move to me. You're the jerk. You sound like you're punishing a kid by withholding their allowance, not talking with your wife. Grow up. Stuff happens. You're in a marriage and a partnership. Don't pretend you didn't take her money and aren't a jerk. That's exactly what you are. You didn't talk about it and mutually agree. She clearly does not agree. At best, you bullied her into giving into your childish and petty demands. Enjoy those Legos. They're going to cost you way more than a few $100. You're the jerk. Stop treating your wife like a kid. What on earth? If losing $250 is not going to affect your life, then what's the point of treating your wife like this? Like honestly, this seems like a misuse of power. I'd bet money that losing $250 means more to your wife than it does to you. Just wow. Sometimes people can be so trash. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know. New job, bait and switch. I worked for a national home improvement store, the blue one. When I interviewed, I applied for the sales position in plumbing, no longer exists. It was Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, with a commission program. Since I had years of plumbing experience, I was offered the job. The day I started, I was told the sales job went to an internal promotion. Only thing they could offer me was part-time, lower hourly rate, no commission, had to work alternating weekends. I was young and had a new baby, so I said sure, as long as I could go full-time in a few months with weekends off. My manager agreed. Fast forward 3 months. Not a word has been said. The guy who got the sales job, an electrician, asked me questions about plumbing all day. I asked my department manager about full-time, a sales job, anything. Sorry, nothing available. I reminded him of what I was hired for, the schedule I was promised, the pay I was originally offered. DM, if you don't like it, look for another job. Jobs at the time were hard to come by, but a job that was available, in that store even, was a stocking job. This position was always available as the pay wasn't great and it was a lot of physical work. But the hours were Monday through Friday full-time, so I applied for that. When I interviewed, my manager found out. He went to HR to stop me from transferring. I informed HR that if the position didn't get filled and I was excluded from transferring, I would filter a complaint. So I got the job. Fast forward 2 months and the quarter ends. No actual plumber in the department meant sales dropped, so manager didn't get his bonus. He now begs me to come back. No thanks, I'm making more money on Saturday doing side jobs than I made Monday through Friday. So he asks, what can I do to get you back in plumbing? I give him a ridiculous price. He laughs and says, that's more than I make. Oh well. Fast forward 3 more months, store manager doesn't get her bonus because plumbing hasn't made budget in 2 quarters in a row. Time to fix the problem. I get called into a meeting with store manager and department manager. Store manager, what will it take to get you back in plumbing? Me, stupid salary. DM, I told you, not reasonable. Store manager, give us a minute, please. I stand up to leave and store manager, oh no, I'm sorry. I meant department manager should leave. Department manager, surprised Pikachu face. Store manager, if I pay you that, you'll have to work weekends. We're busiest on weekends. Me, I'll do Saturday, with every Sunday and Monday off. No rotating days off like before. I get my commission back. Store manager, done. You cannot talk about your rate. I'm the only person in the store making more than this. Me, well, I can, but I won't. The look on department manager's face when we came out was priceless. If he had only given me the job I was hired for originally. But I am the manager. I'm the AGM at a recently opened hotel in my city. I wear the fancy suit, have the fancy name tag, it's magnetic, and definitely don't look like a guest staying there. But I'm also the only member of the team who wears a suit over a generic uniform. We had a woman, I'm estimating mid to late 60s, come in and was snooping around, so needless to say, I approached to ask if I could help her. She said she was just wanting to see the pool. I explained that our pool is closed and still under construction. The door next to the pool itself is blocked off with a coming soon sign. Lady, I saw that online, but I just wanted to see it. You know how sometimes things say one thing online and another in person? Hotels really don't keep up on that stuff. Me, I'm aware that this is sometimes the case, but I assure you, madam, the pool is closed and still under construction. We're excited and hopeful to see it open in January. Lady, is there someone I can talk to? I really want to take my granddaughter here over Christmas to use the pool. Me, I'm the AGM here actually, and unfortunately, as I said, the pool isn't expected to be open until the new year. There literally, physically, is no pool right now. Lady goes up to the FDA and asks about the pool and booking to use it over Christmas. FDA says, slightly confused, as my manager, gestures to me, explained the pool won't be open. Lady looks back at me, then back at FDA. Is there a manager I can speak to? Again, my name tag literally says manager in fun bold letters. Me, madam, I am the assistant general manager, and in fact, the current acting general manager. The actual general manager was away aiding with another property opening. Lady looks at the FDA. I just don't understand. Why can't I speak to the manager? Me and FDA exchange a confused look. Me. Madam, I assure you, I am the only manager on the property. Lady. I can't believe this. I want to speak to a manager. Me again. I am the manager. I said I want to speak to the manager. Me again, more forcefully. Madam, I am the manager. I'm the one you want to speak to. Lady turns to front desk agent. Call the manager right now. This service is so unacceptable. I just want to bring my granddaughter to use the pool over Christmas. Me. Madam, again, I am the manager. And as I've repeatedly told you, we do not have a pool that will be available over Christmas. There is no pool. Lady gets angrier. Why didn't you just say that? It says you have a pool online. This is not acceptable. I'm going to speak to the manager and get you all fired. Me. At this point, I'm Ryle Reynolds done with this. Sure, please do. I'll be more than happy to fire myself, then collect severance for unlawful termination. It will make for a great Christmas bonus. I'll take my wife and kid to Fiji. Lady, red in the face. Your manager will hear from me. How dare you ruin my granddaughter's Christmas? I'll make sure to tell everyone you won't let anyone use your pool. The lady then stormed out. I recognize the lady may be in her early stages of something serious, but in the entire interaction, she was very clear-minded. I don't think I've ever had anyone so forcefully deny my existence like this before. Am I the jerk for watching TV while my daughter eats dinner? I have a 2-year-old daughter. Most days, my wife feeds her breakfast, I feed her dinner. She mostly feeds herself, but we watch her to make sure she doesn't spill stuff all over or if she has any requests. I love my daughter. I would like that to be clear. She's my favorite person in the world. I spend a ton of time every day horsing around with her, teaching her letters and numbers, reading books. I put her to bed every other night, brush her teeth, etc. I spend a lot of quality time with her, in my opinion. However, she is very boring to watch eat. It takes her about 30 minutes, what amounts to maybe 1.5 cups of food, and drink her milk. She spends about half the time playing with her fork, singing the alphabet, or blathering nonsense. We are also trying to be mindful of using electronics around or in front of her. In particular, no phones at the dinner table. About a week ago, I was preparing dinner with my AirPods in and realized that I could continue listening to music and podcasts while I was watching her eat, to make it at least a little more interesting. The other day, I decided to stick my phone in the napkin holder on the table so my daughter couldn't see it and watch Netflix. I thought this was genius. I only have one AirPod in, so I can still hear everything she says. I still am keeping an eye on her. I'm still sitting in front of her, looking in her general direction, but I'm watching TV. Now, instead of dreading dinner time, I'm fine with it. Anyway, yesterday, my wife came home with my mother-in-law and caught me watching TV. When she came in, I pointed to the AirPod, then to the phone, and gave a thumbs up, thinking she too would think I'm a genius. Well, my wife's not happy. I'm not sure if it's her or it's her mom, who was really not happy, but she thinks I should be spending that time with my daughter. I think I am. I think my daughter is completely unaware that I'm watching TV, so no harm, no foul. Am I the jerk? You're the jerk, slightly. Dinner time shouldn't be essentially a solitary experience where you're at the table with family. At 2, not everything she says is blathering nonsense. Most parents would use this time with the kid to encourage discussion about the food, about the day, whatever. It's not too young to teach her about socializing over a meal. And we're talking about half an hour for you. Make an effort here. I kind of sympathize with OP, but this is what you signed up for when you have a kid. Perhaps something more interactive could help. Like, for example, if you feel bored watching her eat, maybe you can read both of you guys a story while she eats. That way it's more of an interactive experience and you won't be too bored. Maybe you can make up a story yourself and tell it, etc. Talk to your kid while they're eating. Open up a conversation, albeit mostly one-sided. Show interest in your kid. Quality time. You're the jerk. Your daughter is interacting, watching your facial expressions, talking to you, and eating. Yes, it is the most boring thing ever, but your being part of it is important for her development. Not the jerk at all. Single mom of a 2.5-year-old. Having her chatter to herself while eating is completely normal, and she would be doing the exact same thing if she was at nursery. If you're spending quality time with her during the day, you've met her needs, and for that period of time, you can meet your own. These comments are absolutely absurd. I spend all day either caring for my little one or at work. When it gets to dinner time is the only time I can get some uninterrupted studying time. Some people think dinner time is the most sacred thing in the world because they spend so much time away from their family for the majority of the day, but for many, it can be the opposite. You're the jerk for making a post and then arguing with everyone because you don't like the judgment. Meal times are great times to interact with your kid. And yes, I do realize they go on about all kinds of nonsense. I have a 2.5-year-old who plays really well independently, but there are certain times where giving them your attention matters. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or not? Please let us know. Am I the jerk for calling my husband selfish for not lending my family money to be able to afford Christmas? I'm female, 25, and my family is huge. Holiday time is when they all gather together and have a huge celebration. Unfortunately, mom and dad got into medical debt and lost money on multiple surgeries in the past few months. As a result, they said they could not afford to have a decent Christmas celebration, which is devastating since all of our relatives wanted to come celebrate both Christmas and their health improvements. Dad came up with the suggestion to borrow money, $3,000, from my husband, male 32. My husband's family are well off, but my husband is dependent on himself and rarely asks them for help. He has a savings account to start investing in the land his father left him. He's been saving for 3 years now. I brought up my dad's suggestion to my husband and he refused, saying he didn't have that kind of money. But I pointed out how he has a savings account with over $7,000. But he said sorry, but he needed it to fix and invest in the land to be able to change his job and work less hours because the land will be a source of income once he invests in it. He said my family doesn't need to have a fancy celebration and instead they can have one that can fit their budget. I explained that we're a huge family with many kids and the money will go towards them. He told me he wasn't willing to waste his money on a ridiculous cause. I got upset and told him that he'll get his money back, but he pointed out basically how my parents are still struggling with medical debt and questioned their ability to return the $3,000. We argued and I ended up calling him selfish and cruel for refusing to help while having the means to. He said he didn't owe anybody anything, then walked out of the room. I stopped talking to him, and now he thinks I'm being the cruel one for not seeing how important his dad's land is for him to get fixed and invested in. Info: my dad didn't ask family to chip in with money because he felt it might be rude and inappropriate to ask my family to pay, and it'll make it look like he's basically charging them to attend. Info: I can't help because I'm a student and I have no income. Not the jerk. Christmas doesn't have to be a big to-do. The important part is about having family around. Homemade gifts such as batches of cookies or a homemade ornament are just as valid a gift as a purchased gift that can be a lot more expensive. I know where you and your husband are both coming from. You're looking at short-term how to help your family, but your husband is looking at the future and how to make a change that will also benefit your family with him that does require quite a bit of money to implement. It would be great if he could help out your family, but he has said no and established a valid reason for why he can't. With good reason. This medical debt doesn't sound like it's going away anytime soon, and there's no guarantee of repayment, which means the future plan would have to go on the back burner and potentially not happen at all. It's fine that you asked, but your husband has said no. He doesn't feel comfortable with it, so if you want to help, it's best to try to find another way. I don't see any jerks here. You obviously care about your parents and want to help them, and that is admirable. The money your husband has saved is his money, and it does not sound like your parents have a way to pay him back. And if they don't pay it back, that's going to cause some issues. It is a really bad idea to loan family and friends money unless you really do not care whether or not they pay it back, because there is no guarantee. Even if someone has the means to repay, they could lose their job, have a medical emergency, etc. Instead of continuing to argue with your husband about this, maybe try to find a new solution. Maybe pull the relatives together and have them all contribute in a way. Point out that due to the health issues, they cannot afford the same celebration, and as a way to support them and help them celebrate, you want to invite everyone who is willing and able to chip in. Maybe everyone can bring a dish and maybe draw names and pick a kid to get a gift for. And tell your parents that you and your husband do not have the funds available to loan them, but that you are willing to help out in other ways, and then get with the family and come up with a plan. If you have this large family that cares about your parents and really wants to celebrate, they should all be happy to chip in. Not the jerk. My husband knows better than to tell me no when I tell him I need money. Honestly, your husband sounds like a total money hoarder. Nobody just needs $7,000 sitting in a savings account. 6-month emergency fund is all anyone needs in savings. Everything else is fair play, and the fact that he doesn't even care about your family is a huge red flag. Hopefully you can divorce this rich boy soon, and half of that account should automatically go to you. When I got divorced from my jerk ex-husband, I was able to get equity in the house even though he bought it before we met. Check if you live in a marital property state like I do, and as long as you get a good lawyer, you'll be able to take this idiot to the cleaners. Good luck, sis. You deserve so much better. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know. Never loan money to friends or family. You won't get it back. Small business client goes no contact after my uncle makes her a website, so he shuts down her site. Okay, so to start, my uncle has been a competent programmer for many years, at least since the earliest 2000s, and even coded a system for his company once, so it's safe to say that he's one smart cookie. But one person thought she was smarter than him and that she would do him out of a website, so my uncle got back at her. My uncle sometimes does odd jobs for clients as a sort of side hustle, making websites, debugging, and/or creating software, retrieving data that an intern misplaced, etc. On one of these jobs, he gets a woman that has her own small business. If I remember correctly, he told me that she sold beauty products and cosmetics like perfume, cologne, makeup, etc. She wants her website to have all the bells and whistles, so instead of going to one of those websites that lets you build one yourself, she decides to get him to do it because of his programming knowledge. So he makes her website and includes just about everything: links to various social media, the ability to make an account on the website, subscription services, everything. But after giving it to her server, she locked him out and not only ghosted him, but also blocked him on her personal and business phones. So it's clear that she had no intention of paying him the whole thing. Cue the pro revenge. So 2 things I should mention. 1. My uncle had her sign a contract which stated she would pay 1/4 the whole price in a lump sum, which she did. 2. The contract stated she would pay in monthly installments, roughly 30 days, and promised repercussions, legal or otherwise, for non-payment. So my uncle waits the 30 days. No payment. So he figures he should make do on his portion of the contract. Inside the code of the website is a code snippet which essentially checks a variable, payment, every 24 hours. And if it's false, the opacity is decreased little by little. But if it's true, then the entire opacity is restored. So basically, if my uncle didn't manually change it from his computer, the screen would just be white. She eventually calls him and threatens to sue him for sabotaging her business. My uncle reminds her that she signed a contract with a witness and legal counsel present, so it would be cheaper to just pay him. She instead did decide to try and sue him, but in court it was an open and shut case since she signed the contract and she was ordered to pay the rest in a lump sum, which put her in trouble because it ate away at most of her business profits. Karen stole my cookbook, so now I'm suing her. My family is originally from a country with a very distinct style of cooking that is hard to replicate in the States. Growing up, my mom always did the cooking for big family events and at home for the immediate family, so her cooking was a huge part of my childhood. For one of my birthdays, I asked her for a cookbook of as many of the recipes as she could remember. So I have this handwritten journal full of my favorite childhood recipes. This cookbook has a lot of sentimental value to me, especially since my mother passed away shortly after. My cousin has been pestering me about borrowing the cookbook for years. She claims it's fair because my mother's cooking was just as much a part of her childhood as mine. She feels this way because her own mother was neglectful and her dad was absent, so my mom was often a mother figure to her, and in all honesty, her only parent-like figure. She spent some time living with us, and she sometimes called my mom, Mom. I've offered to let her take pictures or scan it. She says it would take too long and wouldn't mean as much as the real thing. The reason I'm against her just taking it is because my cousin is a messy and clumsy person, especially in the kitchen. I've never seen her cook a meal without causing some huge mess or spill. This scares me because the cookbook is not laminated or protected in any way. It's just paper and pencil. I had the family over for Thanksgiving and realized the morning after that my cookbook was gone. I immediately sent my cousin multiple texts because I knew it was her, but didn't get an answer. So today I went over in person. She answers the door and immediately starts crying and justifying herself. She spilled tomato sauce all over the book and then soaked it, trying to clean it up in tomato sauce. Most of the pages are pretty much destroyed and illegible. Nobody else in the family knows all those recipes. I feel like I've lost a part of my mother and a part of my childhood. I plan to pursue legal action. The family has caught wind of this, and I've received a flurry of messages calling me the jerk and various other names, saying how I'm ruining the family over a book and a mistake, etc. I really empathize with her grief over my mom, and I know they had a close relationship. I also understand that she didn't spill on the book intentionally and that she feels bad about it. I don't think that justifies her stealing and ruining something with that level of sentimental value to me, especially after I said no, gave reasoning for the no, and offered alternatives. So Reddit, would I be the jerk if I sue? I'm saying not the jerk because your cousin clearly shouldn't have stolen the cookbook and ruined it, but I don't understand what you would get out of a lawsuit. You're the jerk. You're seriously going to sue your cousin over a cookbook? Chances are you have tons of things that belong to your mom. There's no need to be stingy with a cookbook, and if you had just been kind and given it to her, then you wouldn't even be in this situation. Well, what do you think? Should OP sue her cousin or not? Please let us know. I'd do a lot more than just sue, to be honest. I told a customer her daughter bullied me back in high school. So I work at a department store in a mall near where I grew up. I was bullied in high school. I don't think about it a lot, but sometimes people from high school come through my store. I just do my job and I'm pleasant to them because I need the money. Anyway, a woman came through to pick up an order and she gave me the last name and spelled it. I thought, hey, that's Kristen and Katie's last name from high school. It was a pretty unique name. I didn't say anything at first, just normal pleasant chatter. She took the stuff out of the bag to make sure it was right and commented, "My daughters will love these. They just finished college, etc." She essentially confirmed whose mom she was. I was just making small talk and said, "Oh, I think I went to school with a Kristen and Katie last name." She said, "Oh yeah? How funny. Were you friends?" I said, "Oh no, I just knew they were in my grade." She said, "Were you on the volleyball team with them?" I said, "No, I don't think so." She looked at my name tag and said, "That's odd. I think I remember them talking about a penny back then. You must have come over for their birthday or something." That just kind of made me sad because I've never been to a birthday party before. And I said, "No, I definitely never came over." Kristen bullied me, and I don't think I ever talked to Katie. Her entire demeanor changed, which was okay, honestly. I had people in line. She didn't say a single thing after that and just kind of left without taking her order sheet. I didn't chase her down to get it to her. She'll have a copy in her email anyway. The next customer in line said something like, "Whew, that was awkward." And my coworker at the counter agreed. They both laughed about it, but later on my coworker said it was pretty rude of me to tell the woman that her kid was a bully. She has a daughter. I don't have kids. I have a betta-fish named Carl. On the one hand, yeah, I guess. It was like 4 years ago, but at the same time, it happened, and I think a parent would want to know that their kid was a jerk to others so they could talk to them about it, even as adults. Am I the jerk? You're the jerk. You brought the connection up. What did you think was going to happen? She didn't know who you were. Her daughters probably never mentioned you. She was trying to be polite to someone who seemed to know her family. This entire interaction wouldn't have happened if you hadn't forced it. What? Did you think you would tell their mother how awful her daughter was, and she would tearfully beg your forgiveness and call your ex-bully on the phone in front of you and disown her for her crimes? You put this woman who just wanted to do her shopping in peace in an uncomfortable position for no reason. It seems I'm going against the grain here, but you're the jerk. Obviously, the daughters are jerks for the bullying, but they're not part of this story. This is an interaction between you, who works in customer service, and their mother, a paying customer who didn't bully you in high school. As part of your job, you usually have to make small talk as you complete the sale, but you recognized her. She didn't recognize you. You were the one to bring up knowing her daughters, and being asked how you know them was bound to be the next question. You may have answered honestly, but there was always the option you didn't take. Say nothing in the first place. Take her money, let her leave with her shopping, and forget about it. Instead, you went with the nuclear option. I noticed in another comment someone said you were unprofessional. This is what they mean. For minimum wage in retail, professional means you say, "Have a nice day," and then shut up. You've probably embarrassed a customer into not coming back, and you're lucky your management didn't overhear the conversation. Well, Well, what do you think? Is OP a jerk for what she said or not? Please let us know. I'd be proud if I found out my kids were bullies. Karen ruined my $20,000 coat, so I'm suing her. I, 28 female, have a niece who's 16. She's my only sister's only child. 2 years ago, I married a very wealthy man who's 34, and because of the lockdown, last Christmas was my first with my in-laws. My mother-in-law gifted me a coat that is worth more than $20,000. I saw her wearing it, asked her where she bought it, and she said that it would be my Christmas gift from her. I didn't know how much it was. I knew it was expensive, but I thought maybe $3,000 at the most. I was visiting my sister last January when my niece saw it. She Googled the brand and showed me how much it really was. I won't lie, I didn't wear it after that because I was afraid of ruining it. Last week, I wore it while visiting my sister. While I was putting it back on to leave, I felt something go splat on my back. Then my niece started cackling and the smell of paint hit me. I was so ticked off, while she was not apologetic at all. Her mom screamed at her and said she was grounded. Then she said she will pay for the dry cleaning. While I was in my car, still in shock by the way, I got an alert that my niece posted a reel. It was of her doing a prank on me, and she said, "I'm going to hit my aunt's $20,000 coat with a paint-filled balloon to see how she reacts." I saved it on my phone, sent it to her mom, and told her that a week's grounding is not enough. She didn't reply, but I saw that my niece took it down. It got less than 5 views by then. The next day, I found out my coat cannot be saved, so I called my sister and told her that her daughter has to pay it back. Well, we got into an argument, and she said that they will not be paying it, and if I wanted a new one, I should get my husband to buy it for me. I think that they should pay for it. They can afford to. In my opinion, they should sell my niece's car and pay me back my money. We did not reach an agreement, so I told her that I will be suing, and I reminded her that I have video evidence that her daughter, A, did it on purpose for online clout, and B, knew exactly how expensive it was. People in my life are not objective at all. I have some calling me a jerk, some saying that they are the jerks for not buying me a new one, and some so obsessed with the price of the coat that they're calling me a jerk for simply owning it and wanting a new one. So, am I the jerk? Edit. Sorry for not making it clear, but my coat was bought new, just identical to my mother-in-law's. Not the jerk. She ruined a $20,000 coat. She wasn't even apologetic. Not the jerk. This is a really good way for your niece to learn that actions have consequences and hopefully will serve her well in the future when she's older. And your sister seems to need that lesson too. Sounds like just have your husband buy you a new one is not an appropriate reaction to your kid destroying a $20,000 item. Honestly, not the jerk. Actions have consequences, and you're right, a week's grounding isn't enough. She should sell her car and cough up the money. The niece is old enough to know better. Tell your sister either she comes up with the money or you take it to the cops. I wonder if a police report will force the insurance company to come up with the money. This wasn't an accident, it was intentional and she won't do it again. This reminds me of the idiots gluing themselves to paintings to fight climate change. $20,000 is an exorbitant amount of money for a jacket. How sad to live in a capitalistic society where we put such high value on one piece of clothing. Maybe these types of things just shouldn't exist. You're the jerk. I won't try to justify her actions. They were clearly wrong and there should be some form of restitution that is made, but suing her is a nuclear option. Think about what you're trading here. You will spend the rest of your life having little to no contact with your only sister and only niece. Holidays, birthdays, graduations, weddings, etc. will all be awkward. That is, if you're even invited. And for what? A piece of fabric? Doesn't seem like a good trade to me. Well, what do you think? Is OP a jerk for wanting to sue her niece or not? Please let us know. Not at all. You can't just let your kid ruin someone's $20,000 item and expect to not have to pay for it. Break the law? Sure thing, boss. Sign here, please. I used to work as a spare parts estimator for a fairly niche industry. My job was essentially to work out what parts of our main product the customer wanted, find out how much it would cost us to make, add a little markup, and send them a quote. My boss was pretty strict on traceability, so everything needed to be recorded, including why a certain markup had been applied to a particular product. Normal value of these quotes is somewhere between £200 and a few $100,000. Very rarely do we get orders for anything more than that, once or twice a decade in my experience. A request for quotation landed on my desk when I was working from home during lockdown, and it was a biggie. Just looking at the list of parts the customer wanted, this was going to be a giant order, over £1 million all by itself. I was told by the sales guy that if this one went well, there was another to follow of an even bigger size, ultimately looking at $10 million over the next 4 years, so I set to work. Normally, I can do 5 or 6 of these quotes in a day, but this one quote took me 6 weeks to put together. I was in constant contact with 20+ vendors getting specifications, technical details, prices, and lead times for over 400 items. Finally, my masterpiece was complete. Then came the snag. Sales guy then says that because of the country the customer is in, they need to have 4 or more quotes in from different customers in order to get it cleared by their government, some anti-corruption policy that had been instituted. We were the OEM of the product, and there's nowhere else on the planet that they could get these parts from. So we'd have to work through third parties to get it done, and he knew just the guy. In walks a one-man band with a dodgy-looking entry to save the day. Sales guy and him go way back, so he was going to be the preferential supplier. I was asked to do the normal quote to him, then to bump the prices up by 30% and send that to 3 other companies who had been asking about it, so they could absolutely not get the contract with the end user. I argued the point, saying that the whole purpose of the anti-corruption policy is to prevent situations exactly like this, but I was overruled. The COO of the company now tells me to just do it over a phone call, at which point I request that in writing before I go ahead and do it. Fast forward 2 years and there's still no order that's been placed. Then I find out through a different sales guy that the one-man band has been put on a blacklist by this company's government over this project. The other 3 companies have been turned down, and the end user is asking other companies to come in and take our product out and replace it with their own. A huge investigation is called for by senior management. My quote is ripped to pieces and examined in microscopic detail, and the question gets asked, why did you give different prices to these other 3 when you knew it was all to do with anti-corruption? We should fire you. That's millions of pounds of order you've lost us. Out comes the email from my little black book. On the desk it goes. Everyone suddenly gets very quiet, and the COO starts packing his desk in a box the next week. And the moral of the story is, if someone tells you to do something borderline illegal, make sure to get it in writing. For those asking about the legality of what I did, because all of the third parties were outside of the country where the anti-corruption policy was in place, I didn't personally break any laws. Whilst the anti-corruption policies are in place for the end user, the worst the government can do is put us on a blacklist, so all of our bids in the future are either refused outright or looked at in far more detail than others might be. I did investigate this at the time, and if there were going to be any implications on me that my company wouldn't have been responsible for, it would have been a flat no. I was acting against the intention of the policy, but not expressly breaking it. Do not do something illegal just because your boss told you to. The issue as far as the company was concerned was the lost millions in revenue and the damage to their reputation. The end user is a huge company with contracts and is in a reasonably close-knit industry. People talk. They ultimately wanted a scapegoat to parade in front of the board to explain why the multi-million-pound deal they had all been talking about for the last 2 years had suddenly vanished. I did also look at OEM angle at the time, but because we aren't the only company who make this type of product, it didn't appear to be possible to use this as an exception, the reasoning being that the option existed to replace our system with a competitor's. Would I be the jerk if I don't allow my daughter to come with the family on vacation? I have 5 kids, 3 with my first wife, a daughter who's 22, a son who's 16, and a daughter who's 16, and 2 with my current wife, 8, a son, and 6, another son. We are planning a 2-week trip to the Dominican Republic in spring of next year. My wife and I are paying for the 4 youngest, obviously, but as my daughter is an adult with a full-time job, I expected her to pay for her own part of the trip. This is by far the most expensive holiday we've ever been on, and we've been saving up for it for a couple of years. She only pays £300 per month for rent and utilities at her mom's house and shouldn't have any other large expenses as her car has been paid off for a year. When I told her she would be paying most of her own trip, she initially agreed and didn't have a problem with it. A week ago, I was confirming dates and prices with her before I booked, and she decided that she no longer wanted to pay for the trip. I only wanted her to pay £1,400 for the trip, about $600 less than the price per person. I understand it's expensive for a young adult, but she had previously agreed knowing this is what I would expect her to pay and said she was saving for the trip. I also told her she didn't need to pay me all in one go, but that I needed at least £700 from her before I booked the trip, and she could pay the rest within a year. I think this is reasonable. I've put off booking the holiday for the time being in the hopes that she'll come around. I've told her that if she doesn't agree to pay, then the rest of the family will go without her, and she'll miss out. She thinks it's unfair that she has to pay when I'm paying for the rest of the kids, their children. She pointed out we never went on a vacation like this when she was still a kid. We mostly did caravan holidays in the UK and France, and I'm therefore giving her siblings experiences she never got. She also says her friends' parents still pay for them to go on holiday with their family. My younger daughter is also upset about the possibility of going without her sister and says it will ruin the holiday for her. My ex-wife also thinks I'm being unreasonable, as she agrees with our daughter about her not having the same experiences as the younger kids do because we had less money when she was younger. My daughter's stepdad has offered to pay me the initial £700, but I feel weird about taking money from him. As an adult, I really think my daughter should take on the responsibility for paying for herself, but would I be the jerk if I don't let her come if she continues to refuse? Edit. I'm paying around $11,000 for this trip, which is roughly a quarter of my yearly income. I wanted my daughter to pay £1,400, which is maybe 6% of her yearly income. And yes, she does only have minimal expenses. $300 for rent is nothing where we live, and she couldn't rent a bed sit for double the price. A large percentage of her income is disposable, and she saves lots living at home. Bear in mind, I have a mortgage, soaring electric and gas bills, as well as 4 kids to provide for. She's had 9 months to save $700, but didn't even need to because she already had more than $700 saved 9 months ago. She now has another year to get me the other $700, and I had no plans about being strict about payback. This summer, she went with friends for a few days to Disneyland Paris. I paid £300 towards this trip as a birthday gift for her. This summer, when we went on a cheap holiday to Cornwall, I paid for all of her expenses then. My daughter helped plan this trip from the start, and we chose almost every aspect as a family, and she knew from the start how much I expected her to cover for this holiday. If she had said this didn't work for her, I could have picked a different and cheaper holiday. The assumption that my daughter is regularly being treated unfairly to her siblings is not accurate. When I was her age, I was already her father and working 2 jobs, happily, to provide a good quality of life for my daughter and her mother. I'm happy that my daughter's young adult life is more carefree than mine got to be. If she was struggling financially, or even just living on her own, paying rent and bills, I would never ask her to pay this much for a trip. And yeah, I have weird feelings about my daughter's stepdad for always refusing to be the bad guy and let our daughter learn to be more responsible. You're the jerk. So you'll pay for the kids that have no bills, but not the adult who is just starting out and is struggling to get her crap together? Look, if she was spending that much of her own money, more than 2 months' rent, to go on a vacation with her friends, it would be irresponsible. Why on earth is it okay for her to spend it to go with family? Most kids that age don't even really want to go on vacation with their parents and little siblings. You're the jerk. 22 is young to be funding an overseas trip. If she never got a trip when she was younger, you have the money now, and you're paying for everyone else. Take the kid. My parents took my husband and I on a Mediterranean cruise in our late 20s because we never traveled growing up. They covered airfare and all of the fees. We only had to cover excursions and souvenirs. Do you want a family vacation or not? You're the jerk. During the whole time she was growing up, she was unable to enjoy anything like this. The money wasn't there and she couldn't go. Now that the money is there, you're going to pay for everyone else to go, but you're going to expect her to pay for her own share of the vacation. Yeah, you're the jerk. I understand there was a conversation about it, but the fact that you would even have that expectation of her for something like this is pretty messed up. It's not like she's in her 30s with some great career. She's 22. At the very least, you can get over it and pay for one vacation for her. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk for asking his 22-year-old daughter to pay for her vacation or not? Please let us know.
Reddit be like, they're 18, they're an adult, they can do what they want. But then Reddit be like, she's only 22, you should pay for her vacation.
You want HR involved? Okay, sure. I work in radiology. About 15 years ago, I was working with a radiographer, X-ray tech, called Smith. Now, Smith had recently received 2 official warnings of duty, one for mistreating the boss and one for mistreating me. Smith was told to change their attitude and behave. Smith, however, went on a path of revenge that was endless. 1,000 tiny paper cuts for me. Nothing terrible, but just lots of little things which I knew Smith had done, but I couldn't prove. One Monday morning, one of the A&E doctors came over to complain about how poor the X-ray image quality was a couple of nights ago. Smith goes over the roster board and sees my name corresponding to that shift. "You work this afternoon shift by yourself." Smith charges into the boss's office, demanding a full complaint process. Smith demands, since clearly the boss and I have it in for them, HR should run it independently. The boss tries to talk Smith out of it, but Smith basically says they don't trust the boss to deal with me fairly. The boss tells Smith he will hand it over, but be careful of what you ask for. Apparently, Smith was in quite a lather and so excited that they had got me. 2 days later, I'm being interviewed by 2 HR guys and an independent chief radiographer from another hospital. We go through each of the images, and I agree the work is really poor. It's clear no one has actually looked too carefully at the paperwork with the X-ray images. The HR guy finally asks, "Why did you do such poor work?" I reply, I didn't, and if they bothered to look at the online pay system, I had called in sick that day. In fact, Smith had done the overtime shift. They looked stunned. I reminded them I expected the same process for Smith. I also lodged an official complaint about false allegations that were made by Smith for this case. Apparently, Smith tried to stick to the roster, but they showed Smith their pay slip, plus that they had signed off on all the other images. While HR was deciding what to do with Smith, fire them or not, Smith had 2 more incidents at work and was eventually fired. Edit, to answer some of your questions. 1. When Smith got fired, HR went to town and dug up every little bit of dirt on him so they couldn't claim wrongful dismissal. My boss was well aware of who worked and was happy to deal with it, but Smith wanted HR. My boss was more than happy to see Smith dig themselves an almighty hole. Did Smith take bad x-rays on purpose? I don't think so. I think Smith's mental health was crashing at this point. The work reflected their mental health. I think Smith saw the complaint and was quite manic and thought that they'd get me. Smith simply had overlooked the overtime that they did. Unsuitable. Background. I'm in Australia. I'm currently a 32-year-old male, and this occurred this year. I used to do admin work in defense, and during that time, I got rather qualified and experienced, specifically in people management and training people. I then left the uniform for various reasons, including depression caused by my time there. I got a new job, and intentionally got a position way below my capabilities so I could focus on my mental health while still working. It was a hotline for a government assistance program. The position was good for about 4 years. Over that time, I started using some of my skills more and built up my confidence again. I also was acting in higher positions almost the entire time. Initiating incident. So after all of the lockdowns finally finished, there was a permanent spot at a higher position available. By this time, I was the longest serving person remaining in the team, and I was the most qualified. I knew they planned on getting the incumbent to do 2 roles, both of which I knew thoroughly. Went through the interview process, answered all of the questions, explained how I could do the role immediately without training, etc. Had to wait a few weeks to find out the results since it's still government and they don't do these things super fast. Then I got told that I was found not suitable. I was floored. I asked for an explanation, and all I was told is that it was a very competitive round. When I asked what I could have done to be more competitive, I got the same answer. To make things worse, they asked me to train the guy who got the role. Immediately, I brought up the duty statement, which had the list of tasks for my role. Remember, it's super easy. Basically, just answer the phone and reply to emails. I also got out of public service level expectations and highlighted the appropriate bits for my level. Cue malicious compliance. Since I wasn't suitable to work at higher levels, I immediately stopped all work that wasn't at my level or in my job description. To say this put a dent into the extra work I was doing would be an understatement. I used to help out management with sorting out interpersonal disputes. I used to run a bunch of reports to find and sort out work that was missed, and I used to help the other teams do their work. So at this point, my days became super easy. I would do about 10% of what I used to, as that 10% was my actual job. The training I was doing was directing the guy to the procedures, and if he had questions, directing him to ask a supervisor. It was about a week of this before management noticed the training wasn't very in-depth. One by one, they asked me what was going on. Our structure had 6 supervisors at the time. Each and every time I said the same thing. Unfortunately, I was found unsuitable for the role, so I can't teach someone how to do it. To say they were upset would be an understatement, but they tried to stay professional. They then started questioning why I stopped doing all the extra work that I had been doing for years. I directed their attention to my duty statement and asked where it lists that work. They said the extra duties as directed. I then asked how that aligns with the level expectations, which are surprisingly clear and helpful. At this point, most stopped trying. During all of this sudden free time I had, I started searching for a new job. It only took me 2 weeks to go for interviews, be found suitable, and got a new job. Apparently, I'm incredibly competitive at this level. Who knew? The fallout. The new job is significantly easier at the level I was unsuitable for and gives me much more money than they were offering. Additionally, I've kept in touch with some people there. The management are floundering as interpersonal problems are cropping up. The team can't keep up the workload, and at least 3 more people have gotten new jobs, with at least 2 looking for other employment, leaving 1 person left in the hotline team that will know what they're doing. It's a shame, really, because I liked that program and probably would have stayed for a long time. Am I the jerk for my response when my family asked me about having kids? I'm 22, female, and I come from a traditional family. By that, I mean every woman in my family had at least 1 kid before they were 20. Education was never a priority. Because of this, I have 4 younger siblings and about a dozen cousins. Being the oldest, I had to be a second mother to my siblings and a babysitter for my cousins. This made me realize I never wanted to be a parent myself back when I was only 10. 12 years later, and my opinion hasn't changed. I don't like kids, and I don't want any. Last year, I had my tubes tied, and I didn't tell my family. They're trying to push the idea that I'm nothing and my life is empty without me having any kids. I've made my point clear many times, but they kept pushing it. Last night, we had a big family dinner, and they again tried convincing me to have kids, so I shut down everything they said in a not-so-nice way. They were going on and on about how amazing being a mom is and how that's their biggest accomplishment, so I reminded them of all of the times they've complained about having to take care of the kids, all the times they would yell at us for doing kids stuff, all the times they would tell us how much they regret having us and how we ruined their lives. I reminded one of my aunts of all the times she would make 10-year-old me take care of her 4 kids, who were all under 6, just because she was bored and sick of taking care of them herself. I reminded my dad of all the times he complained about how much more money he had to spend on me and my siblings. And of course, I reminded them how they kicked us out at 18 because they don't have to care for us legally speaking. Then I just said something like, "All my life, you've done nothing but complain about having kids. And now you're sitting here telling me how kids are the best thing in the world? You're all hypocrites." Then I told them not to call me unless they decide to apologize for berating me, and I left. They're all very mad at me, but my siblings and cousins say I should have made my point without making them feel like bad parents. So, am I the jerk? Update. My mom showed up at my apartment demanding that I make a formal apology to the family and went off on me for my behavior. Then she went on about how disappointed she is that she raised such a selfish excuse of a daughter. Then she left. So I sent the following message in the family group chat. "I will not apologize for defending myself and standing my ground. I've put up with y'all for too long, and I'm sick of having to justify my choices. I will live the way I see fit because it's my life. This so-called family never showed me any love or support. Even as a kid, I was just a free babysitter for your kids. I see you will never respect me or my decisions, so I don't see a reason for me to stay in contact with you. Do not contact me again. Oh, and by the way, I had my tubes tied a year ago. Goodbye." Then I blocked them all. Update 2. Mom showed up at my work because how dare I talk to my family that way, and how dare I not give her grandkids. My boss had to call the police to have her removed because she was hysterical. I'm going to stay with my BFF for a while. I'm looking for a new apartment and a new job. My landlord was very understanding, and she offered to help me move my things into storage before the 15th of January. My lease ends January 7th. She said she won't charge me any rent if I can move out by the 15th. She's amazing. My boss was also very understanding and offered to help me look for another job. I'm going to see a lawyer tomorrow to get a restraining order against my family members. I don't work for you specifically. A couple of years back, I worked for a very large resort-style place. It was where some very, very wealthy people had vacation homes. This place was huge, as it was basically its own town, and I happened to be in a small subsection of the largest department. Now, it's important to note that the uniforms my small team wore were completely different from the vast majority of people in this department because we were very specialized. We wore blue shirts and gray pants. Most of the rest of the department wore green shirts with khaki pants. Actually, I'm fairly certain that we were the only team, other than the on-site EMTs, who had blue uniforms. It was a big place, lots of employees, so most everyone in public-facing jobs were essentially color-coded. Anyways, it was literally my second to last day on the job, and I had to go to the main office for the department because that's where we kept things that we didn't need all the time. Space was extremely limited in our office. I run inside, pick up the box that we need, and head back out to my vehicle. A lady who's wearing a green shirt walks up to me, and since I try to be a decent person, I smile and say hello. Lady:
Oh, perfect. I need help taking
a whole bunch of crap
over to the banquet hall.
Me, very clearly holding a heavy box that's labeled for my team. I'm on a tight schedule. Sorry. My team worked a very time-sensitive position. I'm talking down to the second sometimes.
Lady: That can wait. I need help now.
Me: I'm really sorry, but I need to get this to…
I don't care. You need to help me.
Me, completely out of hoots to give. Not to be rude, but you aren't my supervisor, and my actual supervisor will tear me a new one if I don't get back to our office right now.
Lady: I'm going to tell the head of the department about this.
Me, over my shoulder as I walk away. Go ahead, he's in his office right now. I just said hi to him. Anyways, I headed over to my office and pretty much forgot about the interaction because we were slammed that day and it was non-stop until we closed. The next day was my last day on the job, so I wasn't surprised to see the head of the department show up when my shift was almost over. He was a really good guy, one of the best upper management types I've ever met, and really made an effort to get to know everyone in his department. My supervisor and I greeted him and we chatted while I finished cleaning up my station. Department head, suddenly very grave. OP, I got a very concerning report about you yesterday. Me and my supervisor. What? Department head. Apparently, you refused to give assistance to this lady when she asked for it. Me. Oh yeah, I was bringing supplies from storage back here and didn't have time. She was kind of rude. Department head, grinning widely at his own joke. Well, in that case, I'm afraid that I'll have to let you go if you don't apologize to her. Me. I'm terribly sorry that it has to end this way, but I must stick to my principles. He laughed, shook my hand, and told me I could always count on him for a good reference while my supervisor cackled in the background. It wasn't a perfect job, but it was one of the better ones, and I'll always be a little sad that I had to move away. But at least it ended with a pretty good chuckle. Want me to come to class and present despite being ill? Okay. For context, this was before 2020, back in my early university years, aka 2018 to 2019. It started one Wednesday morning when I woke up feeling like complete and utter crap. This was a problem, as today I was scheduled to do my oral presentation along with other students in one of my classes. But I figured no way would I be wanted to come in sick. And by sick, when I looked in that mirror, I was so pale I looked dead. My nose looked like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. My eyes were so sunken in that they were in the back of my head, and I was sweating like heck from a high fever. Oh, and my throat felt like it was made of sandpaper. Yeah, no way was I going into the lecture hall looking like this. So I went through the normal procedures, submitting a temporary absent form, which meant for the absent to be valid, I needed to go to a walk-in clinic, Joy, and call any professors or teachers' assistants to inform them of my absence. We have a lot of interactive stuff in lectures. That's also common courtesy, along with an email for a paper trail. My afternoon physics professor understood. My evening teaching assistant for earth sciences was cool with it. My morning chemistry professor?
Either you stop lying and come in, or it's an automatic 0.
I'm sorry? I've never missed one of your classes, even with a minor cold. But this? Okay, fine then. So I get up and my mom drives me in, as I didn't have my license yet. Long story, and she wasn't working that day. She's self-employed. She's worried about me, but I reassured her that I would only be about 20 minutes max. I get to the campus and walk in, heading to my lecture hall, and of course, looking like utter crap, stumbling because I'm also running a really high fever. I get a lot of weird looks, and some students even stopped me to ask if I was okay. I recall responding with something like, "I won't be if I'm late for class." When I do get to my lecture hall, I enter 2 minutes late. Professor sees me and goes,
OP, about time. Get down here and start your presentation, or it's a fail.
"Alrighty." I went up, plugged in my laptop to the projector, and released an almighty round of wet coughing. Now, my lecture mates are whispering to each other, and Professor looks at me startled. But all I remember doing is looking right at the professor, smiling, and saying very hoarsely, "Sorry, I'll get started." She quickly tried to send me on my way, but I say, into the microphone, my voice sounding like a sick bear's, No, you said if I don't present, it's a 0. I can't fail 20% of my grade." So off I go, presenting with a hoarse voice, long, hacking, wet coughs, and with occasional almost throwing up. When I finished, I then turned to the professor and asked, again into the mic, "Do you need me to stick around for the other presentations, or can I go?" I was on my way to the doctor's within 5 minutes, and wouldn't you know, I had a serious case of the flu, something that the university did not want you to bring to campus because it could spread like wildfire. Needless to say, when I filed my full absence form with my doctor's note, I mentioned how my chemistry professor insisted upon me coming to class. I also included a screenshot of the email she sent me while I was being driven in, which stated the same thing she told me over the phone. When I was finally able to return to campus a week later, I was surprised to enter a class to see a substitute professor. I later looked at my email and saw a class notification that our original professor was placed on leave. She was let go by the end of the term. Karen neighbor tries to steal my package. Huge mistake. So I had been waiting for my package that cost $700, was waiting for it like a hawk. I got a notification that the package was about 2 stops away, so I started watching live stream of my security camera waiting for the guy to deliver it. Amazon guy came and put a small envelope inside my mailbox, and I saw him take my big box to the neighbor across the street, and I saw that he rang the doorbell. The neighbor came out and they took it in. First, I thought, okay, maybe it's not mine. So I checked my orders and it said, delivered, handed directly to resident. That's when I knew it was in fact my package. I decided to wait about 30 minutes to give the neighbor a chance to bring it back, to just drop it off at my doorstep. But when I saw that she was not returning my package, I got my coat on and went straight to their house, rang the doorbell and said, "Hi, I'm your neighbor from across the street. I saw that Amazon dropped off my package to your house, and it looks like they dropped off yours at mine." The woman immediately said, "Oh, I was confused. I thought my husband had ordered it." It was obvious she had every intention to keep it. The package came in 3 boxes, a really big one, another one sealed inside of it, and then another box, the actual item, inside of that second box. To my surprise, she had already opened the boxes. I don't believe for 1 second that she was confused. The label had my name and address right next to the part where she had to pull off the tape to open the big box. So then, she just wanted to give me the box of the actual item, which thankfully was still sealed. I guess she didn't open that one because she could see what it was and was probably going to wait to see if anyone would claim it. And I said, no, I'm going to need the other 2 boxes as well in case I need to return it. I watched her struggling to put all the boxes back into the big box, and then she gave it to me. I gave her her small envelope that Amazon dropped off at my house, untampered and sealed, and said thank you, which I regret saying because not one time did she say sorry or thank you. I bet she's done this before and just keeps packages that aren't hers. But the audacity to receive the package and open it. Had she lied and said she didn't receive it, I would have shown her the security footage, but I gave her no option to say that she didn't receive it. Honestly, if she had opened it by mistake and then brought it back to me apologizing for opening the package because she assumed it was hers, I would have been grateful and said not to worry and thanked her for bringing it back. I gave her the chance and the time to bring it back, but she did not. Now I refer to that house as the House of Thieves. I'd also report the delivery driver that claimed it was delivered and handed directly to resident, since it clearly wasn't. OP. Yeah, I already contacted Amazon. Do you have an HOA you can report your neighbor to? There's no telling how many other packages she's stolen like this. I can't believe the audacity of some people. Who in the right mind would just keep a package that obviously isn't for them? The driver himself really messed up too, and I hope you report him to Amazon. Every time I've reported a driver for being an idiot, I usually don't see them delivering anymore after that, so I'm thinking they get replaced once they get a complaint. I don't know where they find these people, to be honest. They deserve the jump scare they get from my fake rattlesnake that I leave by the front door. Oh, that is so not cool. Amazon drivers are the worst. Like, how hard is it to check the address before you drop off a package? I definitely report them to the higher-ups and be sure to follow up on it. I had a friend that delivered for Amazon, and he said that drivers typically suffer no consequences for their complaints unless you reach out to corporate directly, which will usually result in them getting fired. Call me crazy, but what if she just didn't check the label? Unless I'm expecting a package, I just assume whatever arrives is for my wife, so I leave it in the kitchen somewhere that she will see it. I think you've been reading too many of these Reddit stories, and you might be assuming your neighbors are out to get you.
Reddit, the place where being the voice of reason gets you downvoted to heck.
Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his neighbor? Please let us know. Am I the jerk for printing out a map of the grocery store for my dad? I, 18 female, am the only daughter in a family of 4 boys, 15, 13, 10, and 8. Our dad is pretty much a single parent since he and our mom divorced when the boys were younger, and mom lives out of the country with her husband. It's more or less become my job to be the mother 2.0, which is fine, I guess. I'm doing college online, so it's not like I wouldn't be home to do stuff anyway. One of my unofficial jobs is to help my dad grocery shop. I used to go with him to do it, and I would make the list myself, and I'd just grab whatever we needed. But now that I drive the boys around for their extracurriculars, and I'm busy with school or chores when I'm not helping them, I really don't have the time. I just started writing the list and giving it to my dad so he could go out and get what we needed. Every single time this man has gone to the grocery store by himself, he's either completely forgotten about the list, remembered the list, then lost it, remembered the list but ignored it, or somehow could not find more than half of the things on it. It's hard to cook an actual dinner when literally half of what he ends up bringing home is frozen meals and pasta sauce, but no pasta. I've brought it up to him, but Dad keeps saying that if I would just make time to go with him, or if I went on my own, it would probably be easier to get what we needed. I said that we could switch jobs, so he takes the boys to their things and I get groceries, but he said he doesn't know their schedules and he wouldn't want to mess it up for them. He said he'd go grocery shopping today and asked me to go with him, but I was working on some stuff for my finals before I had to drive the 10-year-old and the 8-year-old to their practices, so I couldn't go. I started making a list like I usually do, but because I didn't want to end up with only half of what I had put on there, I went and printed the layout of the grocery store. I even went online and found out which aisle each product was supposed to be on, and I color-coded the stuff he needed to get. I left it for him on the table and then went to take the boys. While I was doing schoolwork during their practice, my dad called me, asking why I felt the need to color-code a map for him like he was a toddler in need of specific instruction. I replied saying that I only thought the map might make it easier for him to find the things I put on the list, since I also made sure that everything was in stock online. It's been hours since we've gotten back home, and he's very clearly upset with me, but he did get the stuff on the list this time. I don't know. I think maybe I just made him feel like an idiot, and that's why he's upset. Was the map thing a little too much? Not the jerk. Your dad is asking too much of you, and he's avoiding his responsibility as the parent. He could and should learn their schedules. He just doesn't want to. You should have a serious talk with him about how he either steps up or he hires help. Can't justify paying me? No problem. Just before lockdown, I worked for a small telecom company that did contract work for a national cell carrier. We'll call them Crap Inc. and Big Wireless. I was hired on as a full-time employee for Crab Inc. along with every other technician, and we were not contractors. Important later. I was good at my job. I've been in the field for over 20 years, so I knew my stuff, and most problems were easy enough to troubleshoot and repair. But sometimes we needed a second tech to help out with bigger issues, which is understandable in our field. Crab Inc. was shady, unbeknownst to us at the bottom of the ladder, but we were about to find out. About 4 months in, new orders came down the chain that from henceforth, we were to do double trips on every ticket. This meant we had to drive out with no parts, assess a problem, then make a return trip with parts to fix it. 2 trips equals double pay for the company. Even on simple things like pushing a reset button. 2 trips, no excuses. Then they began cutting our hours, tracking our every move, and redoing our timesheets after submitting it, with the excuse of, employees are stealing time and we're going to prove it. The latest rule was a good one. All employees must work at least 2 tickets each day in order to be considered for a full 8 hours of pay and 40 hours per week. No ticket, no pay. With this, they began holding mandatory bi-weekly meetings to go over every minute of our trips, overlaying GPS data, timestamps, travel distance, etc. They docked pay for gas station stops, bathroom breaks, phone calls, everything. They even tried to not pay us for these very meetings because our trucks were off and couldn't prove we were working. Buddy, I'm not a contractor. I'm a full-time employee. Enter glorious malicious compliance. See, the thing is, I don't take too kindly to people stealing from my paycheck and gaslighting me about it. And apparently, the other employees felt the same way. Give me one solid night of prep work and I'll beat you at your own game. The next weekend, I held a meeting of my own with the techs, and after some explanation, we all decided that the company was absolutely right. 2 trips, 2 tickets, every minute accounted for, and the GPS data to prove it. Monday morning, meeting rolls around, and every tech drove to the nearest site to have our mandatory 2-hour meeting. The trucks aren't at home and running the entire time. Our daily tickets come in, and we drive directly to the site, idle for 2 hours while we check out the problem, then do our second trip to get the parts, as instructed, and spend 2 hours fixing it, drive time not included. A second daily ticket comes in, and what's this? I can't seem to figure out the problem. I guess I'll have to call another tech who only had 1 ticket to help me. Glad he was free. Let's ponder this problem for 2 hours while wasting fuel. Now we need parts. Looks like we both have to go get them. Return trip complete. Another 2 hours to fix the problem. Let's see how we did. First ticket, 2 hours assessment plus 1 hour travel time, GPS logged. 2 hour return trip plus 1 hour travel time, GPS logged. Second ticket, same thing, all logged. Hey boss, Crab Inc. owes every tech 64 hours of work this week. Let's check the math and GPS logs just to be sure. Oh, and for some reason, the fuel expenses went up. But at least we have the GPS data you need for our extremely accurate PowerPoint presentation. Update per request. Crab Inc. folded from embezzlement, misappropriation of lockdown funds, and sued by Big Wireless for 2 trips, no excuse, among other things. There were a few jail sentences handed out. Not sure if anyone got a piece of that pie. Am I the jerk for giving my future mother-in-law an ultimatum around paying for our wedding venue? I, Victoria, 32, female, am marrying Alex, 48, male, in 2024. We live on the East Coast, but are both from the southern United States, and Alex's family is essentially royalty in their hometown. His parents have a very visible local business, sponsor kids' sports teams, tithe heavily in church, and have their own jingle in commercials. Alex's mother, Frida, decided right away that I'm a gold digger because I come from a tiny town that she refers to as a patch of dirt in the middle of nowhere, and my government salary, which is public record, is less than half of Alex's, though we're both government attorneys. She constantly goes between making digs about my bland wardrobe to making a big deal out of buying me things like coffee and implying that I should be grateful that she and his father Fred are so generous and can do things like host us over the holidays. At Thanksgiving, Alex and I said that we were close to finding a venue, but the one we were looking at had quoted us $25,000, which we didn't want to pay. Not because we didn't have the money, but because it was just out of our stated budget. Frida immediately said that of course Alex wouldn't want to pay that since he'd be paying all by himself, and made a show of telling us that she and Fred would pay for the wedding. At the same time, they said that they expected us to get a prenup because Alex needed to protect himself and his family in case anything happened. We were going to do one anyway, so we shrugged and agreed. Frida immediately began telling everyone in town that she and Fred were paying for the whole wedding, and people kept coming up to me with thinly disguised sympathy to say how nice it must be to have a dream wedding due to Frida's generosity. Alex and I engaged counsel and have been passing our prenup between ourselves and our lawyers. Frida pestered Alex about it so much that he finally told her the holdup is with my counsel because my assets are more complicated to deal with than his. Even though he's told her before that I'm not a gold digger and didn't need his money, it apparently didn't sink in until now. She looked up everything from my property records to salary scales at my old big law firm and apparently realized that I'm worth nearly as much as she and Fred are. When she confronted me, I told her that she could either pay for the venue and I would continue to publicly agree with everyone that she was being generous to her new daughter-in-law, or that she could back out. We had changed venues, and then I'd explain to everyone that she thought I had too much money. She hates both of these options, since one involves losing money, she thought she could lord over me, and the other involves losing face, since she told everyone in town I don't have any money and I'm after Alex's. So she ran off to bed with a migraine. Alex thinks I'm being too harsh on her, but I'm not so sure. Not the jerk, but you have to seriously consider marrying into a family like this. What you need to find out is where Alex stands with his parents and what his values are versus theirs. Is he a mama's boy that lets his mom make all the decisions for him, and he defers all decisions to her and his father? If he does, then you really need to think twice about marrying him. He needs to cut the apron strings and back you as his wife, future wife. You basically need to know that he will have your back and will stand up for you, and even to the point where he will limit contact with his parents if they manipulate and gaslight. What do you think is going to happen when you have kids? Is grandma deciding how to bring up your own kids? Does Alex have any siblings with kids? What's their relationship with his parents? Have you spent time with them to get an idea of how controlling everyone is? Or do the kids' parents decide how they want to parent their kids? Has Alex been married before or had a long-term relationship? Does he have any kids? He's not old, but he's not young either. Does he want any? Do you? The ultimatum you gave your mother-in-law is neither here nor there. It's a lot of money, but may not be a lot if you're rich. It's the marriage that's important. If mother-in-law wants to plan your wedding as though it was hers, perhaps having an earlier small wedding in a location that's important to you is something worth considering, even eloping. You don't want someone else taking over. Even if you win against your mother-in-law when it comes to wedding decisions, can you be so sure that she won't try and sabotage it? Or that she'll wear black and a dour demeanor when making everyone around her miserable on your wedding day? I got you a souvenir. Oh yeah? Well, I got you fired from the post office. Background. Sit back and enjoy a story about some revenge I achieved at the US Postal Service back in the 1990s that cost a bullying full-time carrier his union job. In summer of 1991, I found a summer job as a casual carrier for the US Post Office. They used to hire summer temps to cover for all the full-time carriers who mostly took their vacations in the summer. The USPS has rules that things have to be delivered within certain time windows. People could get fired if they took too long to do tasks. Carriers were both openly and secretly monitored and timed on tasks, and we had the first computerized time system I ever saw. They would be secretly followed a few times per year to be sure they were working hard the entire time they were outside the post office. The post office building even had secret back hallways, passive sound monitoring, and hidden raised viewing areas where they could see the sorting floor unobserved. Cameras and microphones were really expensive back then, so this was all done using tricky architecture and the eyes and ears of the postal inspectors. We were supposed to walk over and punch in and out of tasks so that they could track productivity to the second. People walking a delivery route were expected to do it fast, and better routes went to faster carriers. Slow carriers got mercilessly hassled to be faster and were disciplined for slowness. Pre-internet, there used to be a huge volume of mail that got shuffled around the country every day. Quantities of mail that you would find hard to believe compared to what we see now. I was a broke college student home for the summer and was willing to work any hours they gave me, so the supervisors liked me. I was also very friendly with most of the full-time carriers because I was a good worker and didn't rock the boat. Also, the other reasons that you'll see below. I'm a fairly big guy, 6'5" or 195 centimeters, about 210 pounds back then, and I could carry a lot of weight, so that also made management happy. I was also in my early 20s with long legs, so I could move fast carrying a lot of weight. Sorting mail back then was labor-intensive and took a lot of time to learn. I had a regular route that I would deliver in the afternoons that was sorted by a regular. I would usually do oddball delivery stuff in the mornings, help move heavy things around, do special deliveries, etc. I would also deliver for full-time carriers that went on vacation or whose T6 was on vacation. Side note, mail delivery is 6 times per week, but full-time carriers only work 5 days per week. The T6 is a full-time carrier who did the 6th day for 5 routes. That way, it worked out that everyone only worked 5 days per week. At the time, a lot of retail catalogs were mailed to houses, a lot of them. Some were substantially bigger than current magazines. We also delivered magazines, ads, packages, and samples. A lot of companies would mail free samples of products like laundry detergent, shampoo, and other liquids to be delivered to every house on the route. These were the bane of the carrier's existence because they were bulky and heavy. This slows you down and is physically taxing. Usually, carriers would divide the very heavy stuff up and deliver it throughout the week. On to the revenge. I was assigned to do the T6 work for Dave, name changed, for a few months. Oh, Dave. Picture a failed phys ed teacher in his 40s, bad mustache, around 5'7", wore knockoff sunglasses like Magnum PIs, and had an opinion about everything. Dave learns he has me as his T6 and decides he will leave all of the heavy stuff for me. So once a week, I got confronted with the entire week's worth of heavy mail for this jerk's route. I confronted him about it, and he basically laughed and said there was nothing I could do about it. The other full-time carriers didn't like Dave much, but I was a temp, and he was there permanently, so I was encouraged to just suck it up. I went to our boss and escalated to our postmaster, but was told that he was full-time and I was a temp, so I just had to deal with it. If the mail needed to be delivered that day to meet the deadline, I had to make it happen. The postmaster's exact words were, "Just deliver every piece of mail for the route as fast as you can, and don't worry about the time it takes or anything else. You're making huge overtime on this route." They did talk to Dave, and the most egregious stuff stopped, but I was still doing most of the hard work on this route. I mentioned earlier that everyone was always on the clock and tracked. In my first week, some of the nicer people took me aside at the beginning of the summer and made it clear to me that I was not to move quickly when delivering full-time carriers' routes because it could make them look bad and cause trouble for them. As a temp, I should always take longer than the full-time carriers because 1, my job was limited and the USPS did not really track temps closely. 2, I had 0 experience, so everything should take me longer. 3, this was a union shop, and they would hate to have to kick my butt for messing up their jobs. And 4, most of these people were awesome, and I wanted to be a team player. So I was incentivized to move slowly and not make the full-time people look bad. Side note, I am very pro-union and pro-labor, so this is not intended to knock unions, but the context is needed. I decided to wreck Dave's job since he was such a bullying little tool. I requisitioned 2 additional mail carrier bags. These are the over-the-shoulder satchels you see all the time. I was asked why, and I specifically told them it was to be able to carry all of the heavy items on Dave's route without having to keep going back to my Jeep to reload along the way. The postmaster personally approved it. After doing Dave's route 1 to 3 times per week, he called in sick a lot too. For a few weeks, I knew it very well and was staying on top of the heavy stuff. Once I was comfortable with the route, I started running it. I would literally load up 3 mail bags for each segment of the route and jog or run his entire route. Dave's route took him about 4.5 hours per day to walk. This was probably accurate for him, and he had been on the route for several years. I would finish it in 3 hours or less, every day, rain or shine, no matter how many magazines, samples, or packages were waiting. No one really noticed I was coming back so quickly and punching back out of delivering his route when I was only doing it a few times per week. I would come back, pick up the other work, and get that done. The fun started when Dave took a 2-week vacation and I handled his route 6 days per week. Since I was doing the work right, there was never a backlog of heavy items landing on me once per week. This made it even easier to jog or run his route as I was back to using 1 mail bag and fast walking/jogging was enough to get it done quickly. I frequently got it done in under 3 hours and never took longer than about 3.5 hours. My personal best was under 2.5 hours. I got pulled aside by my supervisor and the postmaster after the first week. They asked me about my timekeeping practices, and I confirmed that I was doing things correctly. I would punch into his route on departure, keep the appropriate logs, and punch back in when I got back. The postmaster then asked me about Dave's route. I played completely dumb. He noted that I complained about the mail volume several weeks ago and that I used to take 6 or 7 or more hours to get it delivered. I explained that I was spreading the heavier deliveries out over the whole week, and that had really made a difference. He asked me if I was really delivering all the mail and whether I was hiding or throwing away mail, a serious problem if true. I got very offended and told him I delivered every piece of mail for the route every day. Then I dropped the bomb. I told him I was having trouble understanding why this route was budgeted 4.5 hours to deliver when it clearly could be done much faster than that. I pointed out that it was a lot of dense multifamily housing, which means less walking. I told him lots of people on the route seemed surprised that I did not want a soda pop or to sit down and talk for a minute like Dave always did with them. Pure lies. All in my innocent, gosh, I want to help the USPS voice. I told the postmaster that I was delivering all the mail as fast as I could and not worrying about anything else. I jogged the route again for the next 6 days and kept getting it done in much less time than Dave. Dave did not know about any of this. He made a point of finding me on his first day back to ask how I enjoyed doing all the hard work for him while he was vacationing. I told him I'd learned a lesson about how to treat your coworkers. He laughed at me and went back to sorting mail. He came back a few minutes later and said he got me a souvenir. He then pulled his long finger out of his pocket. Classic Dave. That was my last week at the USPS, and I headed back to college. I kept in touch with some of my friends I had made there, and one of them was very happy to tell me that Dave was fired about 2 months after I left. Due to the massive discrepancy in how long it took me and him to deliver the route, the higher-ups audited his route and discovered that he actually was lollygagging, taking unauthorized breaks, and apparently having an affair with a woman on his route. All on the clock. I, on the other hand, was in great physical shape after all that running and had pockets full of cash for that semester. His regular T6 also got most of the heavy stuff dumped on her, so she didn't get into any trouble for her delivery times because she was swamped with heavy mail on her day. She actually bid for and got the route full-time when Dave was shown the door. I have more stories of my glorious summer at the USPS, but crushing Dave is one of the high points. Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard.
Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.